What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto has the Reptile summoning contract? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. The time has come. Those were the very words that rang within the mind of Naruto Uzumaki. For him it was time that he finally showed his peers his true potential. Can't wait to see the look on their smug faces. The exact same thought also rang within the mind of another. Within the dark confines of its prison, a pair of ruby-red eyes glowed intensely. The time has come. 5 minutes later. I have one word to say to you, Uzumaki. Naruto's face light up with hope. They had to pass him this time. Besides the little clone jutsu screw-up, he had been perfect. Fail. There was a long silence, so quiet you could practically hear Naruto's heart breaking as he slowly turned and left the room. With a whispered, "Sorry Naruto." Iruka shuffled his papers and left to fetch the next student for the exam, leaving a smirking Mizuki by himself. Perfect. Naruto sat sadly on the swing, his eyes filled with envy as he watched the other students showing off their headbands to their parents and friends. Parents. Friends. Two things he himself had never had, and now once again he had been denied something he wanted. Naruto sat there for hours completely unaware of everything around him, even the ominous shadow making its way toward him. You look pretty down on your luck, Naruto. I bet you'd feel better if I let you in on a secret, am I right? Naruto's ears perked up. Or at least they would have if they could. Let's just say he looked a bit more lively even though he sat in the same position. Mizuki smiled to himself, noticing the slight change of mood. I thought so. Let's just say that there's a secret way for you to become a genin. You up to it? Naruto was immediately off the swing and jumping up and down in anticipation. Hook, line, and sinker. 3 hours later, Naruto had made his way into the Hokage's secret storeroom, and just as Mizuki had said, there was an archive of secret scrolls and valuable items. This is so sweet. I'm finally going to be a ninja now. Where is that scroll? Mizuki said. It has some sort of seal on it. Naruto began poking around the room, messing with anything that had a seal on it. Nope. Nope. Oh, that's cool, but nope. What's this? Naruto noticed a metal box with a large seal, and a sigh that said, "For the love of Kami, don't open under any circumstances." Seriously, we're not kidding, don't do it. Something this off limits has to be what I'm looking for. With that, Naruto tore off the seal that held the box closed. The box slowly opened, a low fog sifting out as it did. For a long moment that's all it seemed to do, until something crawled out, that is. It started slow as if making sure it was safe, then quicker than Naruto's eyes could follow, it crawled on top of the box and stared Naruto in the eyes. Only then did he realize what he was looking at. Bright ruby red eyes with black slits for pupils stared him down. Black scales with blue markings almost like flames ran from its head to its long tail. Small spines running down in a similar fashion, all features rolled onto a 3-foot-long lizard. Naruto had seen plenty of lizards in his life, but this one was strange. Really strange. Then as sudden as a blink of an eye it was gone. That was weird. Must have been a pet or something. Now where is that scroll? Completely unfazed by the strange reptile's appearance and disappearance, Naruto went back to searching for the secret scroll. Finally, a few minutes later, Naruto had found what he was looking for. Sweet, here it is. Now it's time to split before the heat turns up. Naruto quickly left the Hokage building and headed for the forest, unaware that he was being followed. Back at the Hokage building, Sarutobi had been alerted that there had been an intruder in the secret storeroom, and faster than someone his age should have. Even for a shinobi, he was there looking over the room. Well, nothing seems missing maybe. And that was all he was able to get out before he noticed the opened metal box. It's been released. Kami, help us. He also noticed that the village's forbidden jutsu scroll was missing as well, and it quickly became obvious who the culprit was. Naruto. Do you have any idea what you have done? Naruto had spent many hours with the scroll, and had just mastered one of the jutsus inside. All the practice had taken a bit out of him though. Oh man, I need a break from this. That was only one jutsu, and it took me this long to learn. Geez. With a light swooshing noise, Iruka appeared in front of him. The look on his face wasn't pleased. Naruto, so it is you. What do you have to say to explain yourself? Naruto gave his trademark grin, scratching the back of his head at the same time. Sorry Iruka-sensei, I was only able to learn one of the jutsu, but I still passed though, right? Iruka couldn't understand what Naruto had meant when it finally dawned upon him, and he realized the danger the two of them were in. Naruto, get down now. There was a sound of something being thrown in their direction. Just as Iruka jumped in front of Naruto, there was the sounds of something cutting into skin, then silence. Iruka, sensei. Naruto sat there shocked as he felt warm blood drip onto his face. He looked at Iruka to see that there was a massive shuriken sticking out of his back. But, why? Who? Iruka began to speak, his eyes glazing over as he did. Naruto. You have to survive. Please, run away. Tears ran down Naruto's cheeks as he watched his sensei, an older brother figure, die before him. That's when Mizuki made his entrance, laughing the entire time. Well, I never suspected Iruka to get in the way. Tut Naruto, he died trying to save your worthless life. Now be a sport, and hand that scroll over to me, will ya? I gotta get out of here before the Anbu show up. Naruto's face twisted in anger as he looked at the man that had tricked him. You'll pay for this, I swear. Naruto then launched himself at Mizuki, and just a few feet away 2 ruby red eyes watched the whole thing. 2 minutes later, thwack. Once again Naruto was sent flying backwards by Mizuki's fist. Is that all you got, brat? I was hoping you would have a little more fight in you. With a grunt of pain, Naruto picked himself up off the ground. Things weren't going well. He had used a lot of his chakra using the shadow clone jutsu. He would have won if Mizuki hadn't gotten a second wind and destroyed all his clones. This isn't working. I'm gonna lose if it keeps up this way. Actually, you'll die, since I'm pretty sure he doesn't plan on letting you live. The voice seemed to come from nowhere. It was smooth, but had a lethal lining to it. Stop attacking him to defeat him. Mammal attack to kill him, and you just might have a chance. It was as if time slowed down. Mizuki ran towards him to finish the boy off, but to Naruto he was barely even moving. It was dead silent until, fine then I will. Naruto's voice was too quiet to hear, except to one creature who seemed to smile, revealing its mouth full of sharp teeth. Good. Naruto's eyes turned red. Those red eyes were the last thing Mizuki saw before everything went very downhill for him. There was the sound of flesh being tore open, and the splattering of blood. Mizuki looked down, and noticed there was a clawed hand sticking into his chest. He could actually feel it inside his body, grabbing a hold of his heart. There was a hissing noise, and Mizuki followed the arm to its possessor Naruto, and there, laying on his shoulders, its tail loosely draped around the boy's neck, was a lizard. Its red eyes seemed to stare into his soul. He looked at the face of Naruto and was terrified. The boy's eyes were also red, a grin spreading across his face. This is for Iruka-sensei. Then with a slight tug, Naruto ripped out the man's own heart, and tossed it to the lizard, which gracefully caught it in its maw, and swallowed it. Naruto scooped up Iruka's headband, and tied it onto his head. Your sacrifice will not be in vain, Iruka-sensei. I will survive, no matter what. The reptile let loose a mixture of what sounded like a hiss, and a laugh at the same time. That was pretty touching, guy, but enough of the sentimental stuff, let's get rolling. Naruto merely grabbed a hold of the creature, and set it down on the ground. That was a one-time thing, I'll never do something like that again. The lizard looked a tad bit annoyed by the statement. Sorry, but you're pretty much stuck with me after seeing that power of yours. I'm not going anywhere from here on. You and me have business to go over. 10 seconds later. I can't believe he did that. Seriously, did he really just do what I think he did? The lizard had a large bump on its head as it laid on the forest floor. Well then, I'll just have to make the boy see my side of things. Naruto walked away from the area. He knew the Anbu would be along any minute, and he didn't want to be anywhere near the scene. Well, at least I'll be able to become a genin now as long as I have this headband, and explain that Iruka presented it to me before his death. I should be in the clear. Using his crystal ball, Sarutobi had watched the entire scene unfold, and to say the least he was not happy. He was glad that Naruto had been able to defeat the traitor Mizuki, but he did not agree with how Naruto went about it. But what truly worried him was the creature that pushed Naruto to do it. If only there was something for me to do for him. But he could not. The second Naruto had let loose the creature inside, he had opened a path that only he could choose to walk or not. The following day, Naruto was annoyed. Ever since that night, no matter where he went, he was followed. The annoying lizard from before was always there, either sitting on a rock in the sun, laying on a nearby branch, or even crawling on top of him to rest on his head. You know you're a real pest. All he ever got for a reply was a lazy blink of the eyes, or a slight whack from its tail. Even worse, the thing apparently had some friends. More lizards seemed to show up, all a different combination of brilliant colors, and varying in size from 5 inches to 2.5 feet. I don't really care much for you friends, or you to be exact. That actually got him a reply from the scaled freeloader. Well, they care a lot about you, blonde one. To them you're the bringer of great things to come, even though you don't know it. Naruto sighed in frustration. There seemed to be no getting rid of this thing, and its friends. What do I have to do to get you guys to leave me alone? In one fluid motion, the large reptile was off Naruto's shoulder, and on the ground facing him. That's easy, all you have to do is follow me, and listen to what we have to say. With that, the lizard took off with Naruto behind him, followed by a convoy of geckos, iguanas, and monitor lizards. 15 minutes later, deep within the forests of Fire Country, Naruto was out of breath. It was insane just how fast the seemingly lazy lizard could move. Said lizard was sitting on a tree stump staring at him with those ruby red eyes unblinking. Okay then, so is that it? Am I done or what? Suddenly, before Naruto even knew what was happening, the large lizard sprang toward him, and bit down hard on his hand. Ow, what was that for? Naruto's eyes glazed over, and he fell to the ground unconscious. Sorry, but you'll only get your answers in our realm. The reptile's eyes started to glow, and suddenly they were both gone. When Naruto finally regained consciousness, he was in for a slight surprise. Where the hell am I? Where there once was a forest clearing was now covered in plants and vines. The once cool breeze was replaced with a humid and hot stillness. The very trees seemed to change. The great forest of the Fire Country looked more like a hostile jungle. Welcome, Naruto, to the true land of fire. Why does it look so different? Naruto's eyes settled on the strange lizard as it crawled down from one of the trees. And why did you bite me? That stuff hurts, you know. It was the only way to get you here, you simpleton. Naruto only gave the creature a deadpan glare. Once again, where are we, and more importantly, why did you bring me here? The lizard was starting to become agitated by Naruto's lack of patience. As I said, this is the land of fire, or what it used to be. You see, we are in the realm of summons, the place where all great beasts reside after losing their land in battle, and creating a summoning contract. Naruto started to speak again, only to be cut off. As for the second question, that should be obvious. We need you to help us create such a contract. And just who is this we you're talking about? All I see is a overgrown gecko, really. That last statement has really got the gecko steamed, his body visibly turning a reddish tinge. First of all, you're not speaking to some gecko, you brat. Almost immediately the reptile began growing in size at an alarming rate, its shape changing as it did. The spines on its back lengthened, and smaller ones lined up between them. The monster's back legs seemed to grow longer than the front ones, the beast now able to stand upright. From the back of the leviathan's skull grew 2 long horns, and the flame patterns that covered its body seemed to actually flicker and move. Behold, foolish mammal, the past lord of the land of fire, and ruler of the reptiles, Ryuza Tokage. Naruto suddenly felt very small and insignificant. Whoa, talk about a makeover. Naruto had to look completely up to see the giant reptile towering over him, but he looked back down when he felt a movement close to his feet. From all around, cold-blooded creatures made their presence known, from small geckos climbing up his pant leg, to large monitor lizards larger than him pushing over small trees to get a better look. You see, young boy, these are my loyal vassals, and we are in need of your help. Okay, you have me partially convinced. But seeing what you really look like, what kind of help can I possibly provide to something like you? The immense lizard brought his large head close to Naruto, the look in its eyes filled with sorrow and anger. To help us take back what was wrongfully wrenched from our grasp. The great land of fire. Naruto, now starting to get the big picture, suddenly had another question pop into his head. Exactly how do I do that? The thunderous laugh that escaped from the monster nearly blew Naruto off his feet. You see, boy, there are many ways for a group of summons to have their contract constructed. Some merely create scrolls which their current users must sign in blood to call their aid. Others require multiple sacrifices, and the exchange of something of great value. Our way is very different yet similar. We only require you to become one of us. That last statement had confused Naruto a bit. And how would I go about doing that? Another chuckle escaped the monster's mouth, this one a bit more sinister. I thought you'd never ask. Before Naruto could register what was happening, all the gathering reptiles latched onto him, quickly burying him under them. "Welcome to the family." The great lizard inhaled a large quantity of air, and exhaled a greenish flame onto the pile of reptiles with Naruto underneath. For Naruto, he only felt the great heat for a split second, then his skin felt like it was ripping itself apart. In Naruto's life he had felt pain many times, either from a simple fall and scrape, tripping down the stairs in his apartment, and even the beating he would receive sometimes on his birthday if he wasn't able to outrun the villagers. But the very pain he felt at this moment was unlike any other. Try to picture your very skin tearing itself apart, the tissue pulling and straining till they finally snapped apart. Of course that wasn't where it stopped. Oh no, his very exposed muscle tissue then started to strain and stretch, working themselves to a new and unfamiliar shape. And to finish it all off, this figure of exposed muscles was now covered in a new skin, but not his own. The very reptiles that covered him began to melt onto him, covering those muscles with a new skin, a skin that was not human at all. Halfway through this pain-filled event, Naruto blacked out, and that's when another pain was introduced. This pain was less physical and more mental. Inside Naruto's head he saw moving images, relived memories that did not belong to him. Then there was a familiar voice that slowly rose in volume. This land was once home to the mightiest of beasts, a land untamed by man, where swift instinct and raw strength were the aspects of survival. Naruto saw the land from a different view, as if looking through the eyes of another creature. He witnessed giant vegetarian reptiles graze in calm valleys. In a land where the strong and watchful survived, there was no wrong or right, only nature's course. Naruto watched as a group of reptiles stalked along the edges of the valley, searching for a weak or sick member of the herd. One of the reptiles looked right at him and made a short hissing noise at him. In his mind somehow he understood its meaning. There, Naruto's vision swerved to the left, spotting the herbivore with the injured leg. In a flash the entire pack was speeding toward the weakened creature, Naruto seeming to lead the attack. Though survival of the fittest was our unspoken law, that did not mean we had no honor or sense of brotherhood. Naruto's vision suddenly seemed to change. He was now looking through the eyes of one of the herbivores, and he had sighted the swift attackers. Faster than what seemed possible for a creature its size, Naruto moved in front of the injured herd member. While doing so, he heard a low, almost haunting bellow escape from its mouth. "Predators, protect the young and weak." The strange noise translated into those words in Naruto's mind as it forcefully swung his tail to knock away the leading predator. All the other herbivores seemed to panic, running about trying to seek safety, though some started taking defensive positions around the old and young. In this time I was the ruler and peacekeeper of this land, only getting involved when it was crucial. There was a deafening loud roar. All the other creatures seemed to stand still in fright or respect, not even moving an inch. Suddenly Naruto's vision swung hard to the right to witness the sun being blocked off by the figure of an immensely large creature. The only things truly visible were its deep red eyes, and the blue flames that seemed glow all over its body. Then your kind came. Naruto was suddenly watching a lone man from the eyes of some other beast. The man's hair was black and spiky, his eyes green and filled with curiosity. His name was Rain Taigata, and he was the first human to come to our land. Naruto watched the man study the other creatures, his eyes always sparkling with wonder and intelligence. At first I had no idea what to make of him, but it became clear over time that he meant no harm. In fact, he wished to learn from us. The images that Naruto saw seemed to blur into a sort of montage of sorts, scenes of Rain trying to communicate with the great reptiles, the first few ending with him running in fear. It wasn't much longer that I decided to present myself to him to truly see what interest he had in my lands. Naruto watched as the immense lizard first made contact with Rain. Both were cautious of one another, but soon realized they meant no harm to one another. In fact, I taught him our ways, and after a while he was like one of our own. Naruto continued to watch Rain, now noticing how his movements changed over time, becoming more fluid-like, even taking on characteristics similar to the creatures he lived with. The higher members of our territory already knew the ways of chakra, but thanks to what he taught us, our powers increased, making our territory increase as well. There was an image of the lone man walking away now. Naruto watched until the figure disappeared from sight. Then he left, and a few years later, others came. Naruto's vision changed again, and this time he could barely recognize the environment. the lush plant life and beautiful scenery replaced by dark skies filled with smoke, fires and explosions and the unmistakable feeling of pain and death. These invaders did not show the same viewpoint as our first visitor in the place of learning, and wishing to live in harmony they proceeded to exterminate our kind. Again Naruto's point of view changed, but this time the vision seemed disorientated, blurry, and it was constantly he realized that he was looking through the eyes of a lone herbivore cut off from its group, scared and confused. There was a sudden snapping of a nearby twig, and Naruto's vision swung to the left to see a group of armed humans stalk toward him, killer intent coating their forms. When our entire kind, our family is threatened, every member will rise to the fight no matter what past quarrels. That is our way. There was a loud screeching, and one of the humans was suddenly pounced upon by another creature, the sounds of the large reptile's teeth and claws tearing through the man loud and clear. Naruto's vision seemed to focus for a second on the apparent savior, its appearance suddenly familiar. "You owe me one, herbivore." The bipedal reptile then let out another screech and charged toward another human. At the start it seemed we would win, but then, they appeared. Naruto suddenly saw two figures on top of a nearby hill, both dressed in samurai-like armor. One had red armor and dark hair, the other wearing blue armor and having a bluish-white hair color. These two ninjas had led the entire attack. I knew that the quickest way to end this was to challenge them. Images shifted to Ryuza confronting the two ninja. The blue flames that covered its large body seemed to move about fiercely as he roared his challenge at the two ninja, whom immediately began to form hand signs. Ryuza was suddenly knocked backwards as a tendril of water struck him from seemingly nowhere. Afterwards his body was covered in a raging inferno threatening to cook him alive, but Ryuza would not be defeated so easily. The very flames that covered his colossus form suddenly turned blue like the patterns on his scales, and were absorbed into him, intensifying the patterns that painted his body. Another loud roar from Ryuza that roughly translated to, "My turn." The blue flame patterns suddenly disappeared as the beast inhaled a large quantity of air, the very action causing many ninja foot soldiers to lose their footing and be sent flying into the air, the only ones undisturbed were the two lead ninja that he faced. Then Ryuza exhaled, releasing a torrent of blue fire from out of his maw that nearly disintegrated everything it touched, and caused the leaders to move out of the way. The blue leader, not being as fast, suffered a terribly burnt left leg, which from the look on his once stoic face caused him great pain. The battle seemed to still turn in our favor. But I underestimated their power. Ryuza was suddenly entangled in a mass of plant life that grew at an alarming rate. The red ninja appeared before the great beast, using his left hand to control the growth that binded him, and his right to direct a humongous branch sharpened like a stake. It would seem that I would surely die. Then he returned to us. Suddenly a figure appeared next to the red ninja, and struck out at him with its left leg. The red ninja, caught off guard, was knocked back, losing his concentration, which gave Ryuza time to free himself. With rain on our side, victory should have been absolute. Ryuza let loose another blue inferno, intent on finishing the red ninja. At the time I had no idea just what kind of abilities these two ninja had, most importantly the red one. The red ninja quickly dodged the attack and sped toward the great beast, his left hand now surrounded by a white aura. Rain moved quickly to intercept, but had to jump back as a dragon made of water crashed into the ground, almost hitting him. The blue ninja wasn't out of the fight yet. Rain, understanding that he has a limited amount of time, performed a few hand seals and channeled his remaining chakra into his right arm. Said arm started to change, his skin turning to scales and his fingers turning into black claws. Reptile transformation jutsu. Talon of the dragon. Rain charged toward the blue ninja. His time was running out. Ryuza, intent on crushing his foe, slammed his large tail onto the ground, only to miss and give the red ninja a much-needed leverage. I had been foolish and paid gravely with the loss of a good ally. The blow that was meant to strike the beast on its large skull had been cushioned by a second layer of flesh. Rain, the mysterious human, and only one to understand the ways of the ancient land of fire, had given his life to save the protector of this once great paradise. Naruto wanted to look away but couldn't, knowing he was seeing things from the eyes of another spectator. He had watched as the glowing white hand of the red ninja stabbed into Rain's chest and out the back to still pierce the flesh of the huge reptile. Thanks to his sacrifice I was not slain, but instead changed into another form. The form you witnessed back at the Hokage's secret chamber. Naruto was hit with realization, as the pieces finally came together. Those two ninja were the first and second Hokages, weren't they? The images disappeared, and Naruto saw only black for a moment, then he stared into the great red eyes of Ryuza. Indeed, they were after seeing me in my new form, they mistook me for an infant of my species, and locked me away for what reasons even today I don't understand. But that is not of importance at the moment. Right now it is time you understood what you have become now. Suddenly the darkness was pierced by the eyes of millions of reptiles, their slitted eyes all focused on where he was. You are no longer the mammal that first unleashed me, now you are one of us. No better, you have our strength, and the few that the warm bloods carry. You will walk amongst them like a wolf in sheep's clothing, similar to them on the outside, but nothing more than a costume for the creature you have become. You will be our summoner, calling upon us for aid when you need it. We will always be with you. Always an open eye to watch over you. Always a bared fang and sharp claw to fight beside you. Always a family to care for you. Naruto felt those words touch his heart. He felt he could cry for joy, but the tears would not show. Thank you, Ryuza, and the rest of my new family. All the eyes that watched him glowed with a red light and condensed onto him. The final touch has been added. You may now awake from your slumber, Naruto. Deep inside the forest of Konoha, a blonde boy opened his new eyes and began to pick himself up off the ground he was resting on. Though on the outside he looked as normal as any other blonde kid in an orange jumpsuit, okay, maybe not so normal, he was greatly different from any other human being. In fact, he was no longer human at all. Blue eyes looked to behold the land that he would work to bring back to its old ways, and for the slightest of moments the innocent pupils of a boy shifted to the slitted pupils of a cold-blooded reptile. Deep within Naruto's inner mind, in a dark, dank, and gloomy sewer stood a massive gate, its purpose to hold in a great, chaotic entity. The great nine-tailed fox Kyuubi was as terrible as its power, limitless, and his cruelty nearly unmatched. To all that beheld its great presence it was the wrath of Mother Nature, and even the almighty Kami rolled into one beast. Inside its prison the monster slept, occasionally waking to spectate the life of its keeper, always letting out an evil chuckle at the poor boy's pitiful life. That was until the boy ceased being a boy, becoming something else altogether. The moment that happened, the almighty Kyuubi felt his prison of a home change. There was the sound of rock crumbling, and the moan of metal being slowly bent. The Kyuubi apparently had company. A pair of great red eyes materialized behind the great gate, glancing about the room looking for the cause of the disturbance. Who dares plea for audience of the greatest force the land has ever had the pleasure of being walked upon? A slight hissing sound caught the attention of the great pair of eyes in the far corner of the room. A very recent hole had been made out of crawled lizards of many shapes and sizes, each one glaring defiantly at the fox's frightening gaze. I see, so I have a few roommates. Well then, stay on your side of the gate, and you'll be safe from my wrath, but please make yourselves comfortable, it's been so long since I've had company. A fang-filled smile appeared under the pair of eyes, with it a red mist that seeped into the hole made by the new residents. I wonder what kind of effects this might have on the little brat. Guess I can stay awake a bit more to watch the show. Naruto at the moment was suddenly overcome with a sickening feeling, his vision blurred, he could barely stand, and it felt like something was pushing its way out of his chest. What the hell is going on with me now? And like that the feeling was gone, he could see fine again, and the pain in his chest had subsided. No way was that a dream, it felt too real. But what happened to Ryuza? Nothing, I'm still here in the summoning realm, kid. Naruto's eyes looked everywhere, but couldn't see either Ryuza's miniature form, or his immense true form. I can hear you, but I can't see you. Naruto heard Ryuza's familiar laugh as he continued to look over his surroundings. Now that you're one of us, I'll always have a mental connection with you, kid. Naruto, beginning to understand, took a look over at all of his limbs, searching for any difference from how he was before his interesting experience. Yes, you are changed, though it may not be apparent to the naked eye. What you see now is merely the human costume that hides your true self. If you don't believe me, concentrate on your hand. Naruto did as he was told, and looked at his right hand, concentrating on it for a few seconds. His skin, at first soft and pink, began to fade in color, and with a mere flick of the wrist ripped off like a second skin, revealing the hand covered in emerald scales, his nails replaced by sharp claws. Indeed, quite the change, and you're telling me the rest of my body is like this? In a way, yes, under that mammal skin your whole body is covered in scales, everything about your body has been altered in one way or another. Naruto, feeling it tingling on his right hand, looked back at it, noticing the human skin slowly covering his true form once again till it looked human once more. That will continue to happen unless you concentrate and wish it to stop that way, and in situation that your true form is revealed, all you have to do is wait for the disguise to restore itself. Anything else I should be aware with this new body, Ryuza? A long silence followed before Ryuza replied, his voice a little unsure. Well, you see, this is the first time something like this has been done, so understand when I say I'm not completely sure. Naruto's sweat dropped at the moment. The thought that Ryuza, having no idea what kind of side effects this may have on him, didn't make him feel better. I can tell you what I do know, or at least what I intended, if it makes you feel any better. Sure, lay it on me. If I'm to be at my 100, I should know what I'm capable of in this body at least. That's when Naruto felt two things, one being a pain at the base of his spine, the other something crawling inside his jacket. Well, since your body has been altered to be more like ours, I wouldn't be too surprised if a tail sprouted out of your pink butt, but the odds of that are pretty ridiculous, right? A pained yell from Naruto and the slight ripping of cloths was the only reply he got after that statement. Well, hopefully that should go away after a bit or so. I also intended that you would be our summoner. But since I found the whole biting your thumb thing unneeded, I turned your body into a living portal for our kind. What do you mean by that, Ryuza? Naruto, a little out of breath thanks to the new tail that was swaying about in an almost playful manner, didn't like the sound of his body being a portal of any kind. That's when a small monitor lizard decided to poke its head out of his collar. I think I get what you're saying, but you may want to explain before I get angry, Ryuza. Patience, brat, I swear, give a kid a few nice tricks and he gets all unappreciative, sheesh. Another slight pain in Naruto's chest, and he suddenly felt something crawl down his left arm sleeve. Well, I meant for you to be able to summon us at will, but you see, thanks to your special condition it didn't come out as planned, which leads me to believe that it may have effects on everything else. What do you mean, special condition? Naruto at the moment noticed a gecko was now crawling onto his left hand from within his jacket. Are you trying to tell me that I'll have these guys crawling out of my chest every few seconds? First, that's a little weird, and I'm sure my jacket is gonna get cramped after a while. Well, you can stop it at any moment that you like, and the more chakra you focus into it, the bigger and more useful they get. As for the jacket, I suggest a change of clothing, then maybe something that can be easily opened for when the big things come out, and covering enough that will hide your form if you need to let your human skin restore itself. Naruto, concentrating a little, felt the slight pain in his chest fade away, and the lizards that crawled out of his jacket ceased, the ones already there either leaving for elsewhere or making themselves comfortable on his shoulders. Okay, that solves that problem. Now, what did you mean about special condition? Another long pause from Ryuza before a serious answer was given to him. Do not worry about it, the condition will reveal itself in time, boy. For now, let's look over all the new perks you've been gifted with. In the following hours, Naruto learned that along with his tail he could now sense heat signatures in living organisms, communicate with the reptiles that followed him about, though only a few could speak back to him, the full usage of his tail, and that at a level his true form should give him a level of camouflage when needed. It was soon night again, and Naruto knew he had to get some sleep if he wanted to be ready enough for when he got assigned to a team the next day. Ryuza told him good night, and that he would be in touch if he needed. The next day at the academy, everyone was surprised to see Naruto wearing a headband along with his interesting change of attitude. Naruto made eye contact with no one, not completely sure if his disguise had worked or not, merely headed for the back of the classroom, his eyes instead concentrating on the small lizard that had found its way into his kunai pouch, and was now resting on his shoulder. Wow, how the hell did you get a headband, Naruto? Last time I checked, they only let students with at least a little skill become a genin. Kiba, being the first to say anything, made his way toward Naruto, his eyes full of arrogance. Well, since they let you become a genin, they must be letting in the students with no skill in Hakiba? Naruto's reply had stricken a nerve as Kiba's face turned red, his teeth bared at Naruto, who was no only a few feet away. Before things could get out of hand, an instructor made his way into the classroom, apparently Iruka's substitute. Naruto's thoughts went to the teacher that had become a friend to him, his face visibly darkened for a slight moment. Your death will not be in vain, Iruka-sensei. Naruto's thoughts were brought to an end as he heard his name called out by the instructor. Naruto Uzumaki. You will be assigned to Team 7 along with Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha. And I thought things would start getting better. Naruto glanced at his two teammates, not happy with being paired with either. A while ago he had a crush on Sakura, but she never returned his feelings, instead calling him annoying and chasing after her loved Sasuke. It wasn't long after that Naruto decided that she wasn't worth the effort. Sasuke was just as bad, if not worse. All he did was brood as his crowd of fangirls swooned over him, thinking he was the best out of all of them, the kind of attitude Naruto didn't like even less now that he found mammals irksome due to his recent change. Soon all the students had left with their new team leaders except Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke. Naruto falling asleep by the window, finding the sunlight to be very relaxing. Though Sasuke thought of all the other genin below him on skill, noticed that Naruto had changed somehow, he didn't know how, and that irked him, so deciding that now was the best time, he got up and strolled over to the sleeping blonde, intent on waking him up. "Hey Dobi, wake up." All Sasuke got as a reply was the blonde covering his head, trying to drown out the noise, and a small lizard crawling out to hiss at him, glaring at him defiantly. "You got some kind of problem with me, Tiny?" Sasuke moved to poke the lizard in the head, expecting it to scurry away. Instead, all it earned him was a nasty bite from said lizard. "Ow, I can't believe the stupid thing actually bit me." Sakura, seeing her crush in pain, quickly made her way over to where her teammates were intent on saving her precious Sasuke-kun. "Don't worry Sasuke, I'll teach this disgusting thing a lesson it'll never forget." Sakura made a move to stomp on the small lizard when she felt a large amount of killer intent coming from next to her, where Naruto was now standing up, his face showing pure irritation as he stepped toward her. "If you even think about harming the little guy, you'll find yourself in pain unlike any other you've ever felt before." Sakura, her voice suddenly lost, could only stare into Naruto's cold eyes, his pupils shifting for a moment before he picked up the lizard and gently put it down on his shoulder. Sasuke, feeling the killer intent, stopped his yelling to look at Naruto. Noticing the seriousness on Naruto's face, decided that the Dobi was acting out of character for his liking. "Perhaps you should keep that little slimy thing on a leash then, Dobi, before I—" Sasuke didn't get to finish as he was suddenly looking into Naruto's fierce eyes, the words dying in his throat before he could speak them. "How about you do two things, Sasuke? 1. Keep your voice down, I was trying to sleep. And 2. Keep your filthy digits off the lizard before you lose one of them." Naruto sat back down, feeling annoyed, but glad that he had been able to protect the little family member that was now crawling back into his kunai pouch for some shut-eye. There was an awkward silence for a few seconds till the sound of footsteps and the opening of the classroom door as a one-eyed Jonin with gravity-defying silver hair poked his head into the room. "I'm assuming you're the genin assigned to Team 7, right?" All three genin nodded, still taking in the new arrival's appearance. "Well then, meet me at rooftop in 5 minutes. With that, the mysterious Jonin disappeared in a poof of smoke and green leaves. There was a long pause in the room as all three genin were still coming to the conclusion that the masked shinobi was to be their sensei from then on. Well, you gotta admit that was a pretty cool exit. Both Sakura and Sasuke turned to fix a icy glare on their blonde teammate, only to find that he himself had disappeared. Both genin were still in the room together when Sakura realized an opportunity had presented itself to her. "Well Sasuke, I guess that just leaves you and me, right?" When Sakura turned to see Sasuke, he too was gone. Damn it. Sakura quickly ran out of the room, hoping to catch up with her teammates. At the top of the building. Interesting, really interesting. Kakashi Hitaki wasn't much for being surprised in life, especially by any genin, but this Naruto character was really interesting to say the least. When he had gotten to the rooftop half a second later, the boy had climbed the wall of the building to get to the top, looking like he had done nothing at all. And what was with the lizard thing? The little buggers were all over the place once Naruto had gotten there. Feeling a slight pain on his foot, Kakashi looked down to notice one of the boulder lizards had taken a nip at him, the look on its face like that of a child getting caught with its hand in the cookie jar. I always get the weird ones. When Sasuke and Sakura had finally gotten up there, Kakashi decided that now was time to go through the standard "let's get to know each other" procedure. That was probably a mistake, but how was he supposed to know? "Okay brats, let's get to know each other a little. We're going to play a bit of a game where we tell each other about our likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future." Sakura, not totally getting it, decided to pipe up at that point. Kakashi-sensei, how about you go first, that way we know what you mean exactly." Kakashi with a bored sigh agreed to go first, after finding another lizard trying to take a bite out of his feet. Okay then, my name is Kakashi Hitaki. I have many likes and dislikes. As for my dreams, I don't really feel like telling you three. Okay, you next, Pinky. All genin visibly sweat dropped, thinking the same thing. That was really informative. Sakura went next, stealing looks at Sasuke the entire time. My name is Sakura Haruno. My likes are looks at Sasuke. And giggles loudly. My dislikes are annoying people like Naruto. Naruto visibly gives her the finger. And my dreams for the future are looks at Sasuke again and blushes. Kakashi shakes his head a bit. It was apparent Sakura's crush on Sasuke would become an obstacle later on. Okay, you next, fanboy. Sasuke glares a bit at Kakashi, apparently not liking the fanboy joke, but go along with the game. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I don't like anything really. Sakura's face saddens for a moment. I dislike a lot of things, especially Naruto's ugly pets. Naruto once again gives the one-fingered salute in reply. As for dreams for the future, well, I plan on killing a very special someone. There was a long pause before it was interrupted by Naruto. Well, that wasn't completely emo or anything now, was it? Sasuke glared at Naruto as he stood up, it being his turn. Now this I want to hear. Kakashi thought in his head. His curiosity in the boy had been rising slowly. Well, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, fighting, and of course my family. At this, all the lizards gathering around Naruto immediately looked at him, and crawled on top of him. My dislikes are vegetables, and just about every other human in the world. At hearing this, everyone gives him a strange look which he ignores. As for my dreams, I plan on reconstructing the land to what it once was. Now that really was an interesting answer. What exactly did he mean by that? Kakashi decided to think it over later to move things along. Okay, now that we have all of that out of the way, time for your first mission. You three are to meet me in training area 13 tomorrow morning. And make sure not to eat anything between now and then, or you'll most defiantly puke. Before he could get a reply, he vanished in another flashy, yet leafy display. Well, if two don't mind, I have better things to do than to stand around with two warm bloods. Peace. With that, Naruto jumped over the edge and was gone from sight. Sasuke started walking off without a word, ignoring Sakura as she made another attempt at asking him for a date. The next morning, all three rookies had been waiting at training ground 13 for over an hour, and to say the least they were slightly annoyed. Naruto being the first one there wasn't really doing much, his great hunger broadcasting itself as his stomach made deep growling noises. Sasuke silently sitting alone, and Sakura walking back and forth ranting loudly about late senseis. With a almost inaudible swoosh, Kakashi appeared, the look of amusement on his face making his students hate him even more. Why, good day students, I was on my way when a black cat crossed my path. Sakura immediately started yelling as Sasuke stood up, and Naruto merely looking in their direction. Kakashi's face suddenly turned serious at this point, earning the attention of all three genin. Now that we're all here, time for your real test. You see, the first test was merely to get everyone in teams. Now we test you kids on your teamwork skills. You have till this timer goes off to get these bells. Kakashi produced both the egg timer and 2 bells from his pocket. Whoever gets one of these babies before the buzzer goes off gets to eat, and gets to be a full-fledged genin. Whoever doesn't fails and goes straight back to the academy. The realization of why their sensei had them not eat anything finally dawned on all three of them. And of course Naruto wasn't too happy with being deceived. Okay, big mistake. First you made me go hungry. Then you make me sit around with these weirdos. Now this. You're in for a world of hurt, guy. Kakashi merely rolled his eye, though interested in what the blonde could do. Well then, we'll just have to see, brat. You three have the count to 3 to find a good hiding spot before this test begins. 1. Sasuke and Sakura both make a quick run to the forest to find a good spot. 2. Naruto cracks his knuckles, glad he finally had the chance to test his new abilities. 3. Kakashi looks toward Naruto, noticing no sign of retreat. Well, this is strange. You must be really eager to lose, or just plain stupid. Naruto's eyes shift for a moment, and a grin appears on his face. Nah, I just want to pummel you a bit, before I help myself to one of those bells. Kakashi pulls out a book, and with a bored expression starts to read it. Well, you're welcome to start anytime you feel ready, just try to come at me with the intent to. Naruto, wasting no time, charges at Kakashi, hoping to land a full-thrown right haymaker. Kakashi, though not caught off guard in the least, merely sidesteps and trips Naruto, who in turn catches himself with his left hand, and twists trying to catch Kakashi with a kick. Kakashi, not expecting the last move, had to actually block the move, though without much effort. Naruto, keeping on the offense, pushes himself up and flips over Kakashi and throws a deadly axe kick down, just barely missing the silver-haired Jonin. Guess I won't get any reading done anytime soon. This kid means business. Kakashi puts away the novel and catches another punch thrown by Naruto, following it up by throwing him over his shoulder. Naruto, thinking, quickly grabs onto the arm Kakashi used to catch his punch and firmly grips the ground with the claws on his feet and reverses Kakashi's throw with a very surprised Kakashi in the air instead. Careful, kid, that was a good move, but you better hope no one saw the claws rip through the human covering. It would be bad to have your true form revealed this early in the game. Silently thanking Ryuza for the advice, Naruto made a note to watch how much he used his abilities in front of humans. How did he do that? The very same thought had gone through the mind of Sasuke, Sakura, and more importantly Kakashi, who had caught himself and quickly decided to put this boy on the "watch out for" list. Before anyone could even notice, Kakashi quickly got behind Naruto and prepared one of this most deadly techniques. I didn't think I'd have to use it, but this kid is turning into a real nuisance. Sensing danger, Naruto started to turn around, but was still too late as the deadly words entered his ears. 1,000 years of death. There was a long pause before Naruto was propelled into the air and into the forest, yelling the entire time. Ouch, and right at the base of the tail that has got to suck. Naruto sent Ryuza a silent, "Shut the fuck up," as he stood back up and looked for a favorable position to scope out the one-eyed enemy. Sasuke, sensing an opportunity, let loose a volley of shuriken at Kakashi while he wasn't looking, jumping down from the tree he perched in and sprinting toward him as he did. Perhaps I used a bit too much chakra on that one. Kakashi suddenly noticed the sounds of something speeding toward him. Thinking quickly, he blocked the projectiles with his kunai and was caught off guard by Sasuke attacking from the left with a kick aimed at his head, which he blocked with his other hand. So the other one makes an appearance, though I'm wondering if you'll put up as good a fight as Naruto did. That dobi is nowhere near my level of skill. Sasuke threw another kick which was blocked and jumped back, preparing a jutsu as he did. I'll show you just how much stronger I am. Kakashi sighed in annoyance as he noticed what jutsu the Uchiha was preparing. Kids these days, I swear. Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu. A large fireball spewed from the Uchiha's mouth, incinerating everything in its path. When the last bit of fire had left his mouth, Sasuke scanned the area, not seeing any sign of the silver-haired Cyclops. Guess I overdid it a bit. Not much sensei left to teach now, is there? Suddenly a hand erupted from the ground underneath Sasuke, grasping his leg. Don't let arrogance cloud your sight, kid. Even if there isn't any enemy on the ground or in the air, always suspect he'll be below you. A moment later, Sasuke had fallen victim of Kakashi's Doden Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu. The only part of him still visible above ground was his head. Well, at least I did better than the dobi, right? Sakura was starting to get worried. She had only caught a glimpse of Naruto's fight with Kakashi before she decided to move to find Sasuke, and she hadn't seen either of them since. Wait, what was that? I could have sworn I. Suddenly surrounded by leaves, Sakura was momentarily blinded until they caught sight of a severely wounded Sasuke lying in a pool of his own blood. Sasuke. Kakashi chuckled to himself as he watched Sakura fall victim to the weak genjutsu he had used on her. This should be fun for a few minutes, then I guess it's time to check up on the blonde one. A few minutes later. Let's see now. One garden variety Uchiha Kakashi glances towards Sasuke, who is still trying to free himself of his planted position. Check. One unconscious Haruno Kakashi watches Sakura twitch on the ground. The sight of her beloved Sasuke neck deep in earth had caused her to faint. Check. Now where's the Naruto I set up to dry? Kakashi had expected to see a certain blonde hanging upside down from a trap he had set using the bell as the bait. No such luck, I guess. Perhaps they're getting smarter? That's when a kunai from the left was thrown in front of his to get his attention. Naruto, after having pulled himself together, had decided to go with a different strategy. He had seen how Sasuke had managed, which wasn't much worse than he had, so he figured if the three of them all went at their sensei, they would have a chance. As for the bells, they'd figure that out when it was time. Now that he had the Jonin's attention, it was just a matter of keeping it long enough for his little friends to wake up Sakura and dig out Sasuke. Yo Kakashi, how about you try this one on for size? With that and a simple cage bunshin no jutsu 7 Narutos poofed into existence, all eager to dish out some punishment to the now interested Jonin. All 8 Narutos charged toward Kakashi, each on intent on doing some damage. Kakashi merely gave another bored sigh before the first Naruto was close enough to send a kick toward his midsection. And I thought the day wasn't going to get any worse. Sasuke wasn't enthused about having 3 lizards dig him out of his current position. Worst yet, the lizard from the day before was perched on top of his head, comfortably enjoying Sasuke's inability to do anything besides gripe. I think I understand what you're getting at, Dobby, but I would have rathered you'd have something else help me out besides these things. Ouch. Sasuke's last comment did not go well with the lizard on his head, so he was punished with a hard bite on the ear. Sakura wasn't any happier. She herself woke up to the cold, unblinking eyes of a monitor lizard as it licked her with its long forked tongue. Naruto, I swear you'll pay for this. Naruto was getting annoyed. So far, without really trying, Kakashi had already rid the world of 5 Naruto clones, and was currently working on the 6th. Poof, damn it, okay, time for something new. Naruto's last clone attempted a windmill kick to Kakashi's side, which was easily blocked. Right as Kakashi pulled back his right arm for a deadly counter, it was suddenly restrained by a force he couldn't see with his attention on the clone. Naruto knew it was a risky move but found it necessary, so quickly he let loose his tail, and used it restrained Kakashi from behind, giving him enough time to leg sweep the Jonin, and once the Jonin had lost his balance, his close continued with another kick that struck home, driving the silver-headed ninja to the ground, and hard. Poof, what should have been Kakashi had turned to a log which broke in half from the force of the clone's attack. Damn, should have known he would do that. Quickly withdrawing his tail, Naruto looked to his clone for any input. Said clone had poofed from a kunai to the back. Well, that was a good try, Naruto, and even though I don't know how you were able to restrain my arm back there, you still failed to grab the bells. Naruto looked in the direction of the voice and smirked. True, but my teammates didn't. Isn't that right, Sasuke and Sakura? Kakashi from the branch he stood on a bit away suddenly sensed the presence of 2 others. That's very true, Naruto. With him focusing on boasting toward you, he had no idea we were right behind him. Kakashi now noticed at the corner of his eye both Sakura and Sasuke standing next to him, both holding a bell in their hand. I guess we win, don't we, Kakashi-sensei? A few minutes later, Kakashi had revealed that despite the 2 bells, all 3 had passed due to the test actually being about testing a team's ability to make sacrifices for the good of the team, which they passed with flying colors. Remember now, those who refuse to follow orders are trash, but those who turn on their teammates are worse than trash. That thought had been going through Naruto's mind as he walked home. Is it possible for a mammal to actually have honor above its own need for self-preservation? His reply was a short, perhaps. Rain had honor, and he was one of them. Naruto, could you please calm down? Sarutobi was willing to give Naruto a little slack, though he wasn't exactly sure what. He was well aware that something had happened to Naruto after his contact with the strange reptile. But the blonde's constant yelling and demanding for higher-ranked mission was starting to get on his old nerves. Okay then, if you think you're ready, how about you and your team take of this C-rank mission that has recently come up? Kakashi was once again surprised. He had started getting used to Naruto's loud outburst when he wasn't happy with something, but the fact that it had actually landed them a C-rank mission this early was a bit unexpected. Well, before we get ahead of ourselves, sir, I'd like to know what this C-rank mission is about. Kakashi figured it was about time he spoke up before Naruto got the rest of them into something irksome. Well, it's a little escort mission from the Land of Waves. They're a small trading island that needs to have their client protected on his journey back. At this, all members of Team 7 snapped to attention. Finally, a mission worth their effort had presented itself to them. Well then, where is our kind client? Then let's get things underway, shall we? With a gesture that clearly meant okay, let him in already, the 3rd Hokage took another drag off his pipe. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to meet this guy. That was a very big understatement. Within 3 minutes of showing up, the client had effectively pissed off just about all the members of Team 7 except Kakashi. What is this? I'm supposed to trust my life to a bunch of snot-nosed brats? I mean, look at the blonde one first of all. That's one of the weirdest fashion trends I've seen. And what's with the walking snakes all over the place? True enough, Naruto had recently changed his wardrobe a bit, choosing to go with a large trench coat with a hood, to better situate the family members that would occasionally pop up when called upon, and to better hide himself if he was to dispose of the human outer skin. Though it was obvious the old bridge builder was intoxicated, it didn't make his words any less insulting, and that was something Naruto decided to remedy at the moment. In an instant Naruto was in front of the bridge builder, eyes shifting in anger, and a large smile showing Naruto's many sharp teeth. "Don't worry about getting there safely, sir, just be sure to stay out of my way. If anything happens, I tend to not really mind the difference between allies and enemies. You're all worthless mammals to me." Naruto felt two things at the moment. First of all was Kakashi, who had stepped behind him, a look on his face that said, "Don't push it, kid." The second being the third Hokage's gaze that centered on him with a look of curiosity. After that interesting introduction, everyone headed to the gate to get started on the mission, Kakashi in front with the now slightly nervous bridge builder who had identified himself as a Tazuna, whose job was to finish the building of a bridge that would connect the land of waves to the rest of the land. During the journey, Sakura had decided to try to get the rest of the group talking. "So Naruto, what's with the change of clothes anyway? Don't you usually like wearing that annoying orange jumpsuit?" Naruto merely replied with "I just felt it was time for a newer look. I think it makes me look more professional." Sasuke, though barely listening, decided to comment on that. "Well, it makes you look more like Adobe than usual, and with those ugly pets of yours I'm sure you'll catch an enemy off guard with that bizarre look." Naruto laughed a bit at that, not surprised that Sasuke would try a cheap shot at his traveling companions. "You're one to talk, Uchiha. That fan on your back makes you look like a big target from the back. I guess stupidity must be a family trait, right?" Sasuke quickly turned to Naruto, his last insult apparently hitting a sore spot. "What was that, loser?" Naruto, completely ignorant of the seething Uchiha, only continued forward. As far as he was concerned, the little argument was over. "You heard me." Sasuke was seething with anger, and made a mental note to show the dead last exactly where his place was, underneath my feet. Sakura was already wishing she hadn't started the conversation, though she loved Sasuke, and found Naruto weird and annoying. She didn't like to see her teammates fighting. "Don't worry, Sakura, boys like them usually never get along until they save one another. Just give it some time." Sakura was slightly startled that Kakashi had managed to fall in step right next to her and accurately figure out what was bothering her. Not long into their journey, Naruto's senses picked up a new presence. In fact, two, though. As he scanned over the path before them, he noticed these two unknown creatures seemed to be hiding their appearance with an illusion of a puddle. As the group passed the puddle, Naruto decided to state what to him was incredibly obvious: "It would seem we have some company." After what seemed like an instant later, two ninjas sprang from the puddle and rushed the team leader Kakashi, who only managed to get out a "what the hiea." The two shinobi worked flawlessly as a team to bind the silver-haired ninja in their shuriken chain and slice him to bits. Instantly Sakura was in front of the now scared bridge builder, and Sasuke, still stunned by the ambush, could only stand there. Naruto, noticing Sasuke's flinch, made his way toward the twin ninjas, the lizard on his shoulder climbing into his coat to avoid getting in the way. "That's right, little guy, let the big boys handle this." Naruto cracked his knuckles, feeling the human skin ready to tear at a moment's notice. "Hey, you feel like trying that on me?" The demon brothers, hearing the blonde's challenge, happily obliged, charging at Naruto full speed, intent on rending him with their iron claws. Clang, the faster brother, had gotten to Naruto first, and expected an easy kill. Instead, he felt his iron gauntlet stopped and gripped by Naruto's bare hand. "Oh, you poor idiot, don't you know that these imitations are nothing compared to the real claws of a predator?" With a malicious glint in his eyes, Naruto started gripping harder, seeing the surprise and horror in the assassin's eyes as he felt the iron claw bend and give under the pressure. Noticing the second ninja closing in quickly to bind him with the chain, Naruto with little effort at all flung the ninja, now grunting in pain, to the side into the forest, the chain that binded the two ninja together dragging the other along as well. Naruto, with an interested smile on his face, walked in the direction he had thrown them. "I'll be right back, guys." "Oh, and Sasuke, nice flinch." Naruto laughed a bit before he walked into the forest, where he couldn't be seen by the rest of the team. Finally, a little excitement. "I hope these two are good. I need a good exercise." When Naruto reached the point where the two ninjas should have landed, he found only the chain that bound them together. Interesting. Naruto then jumped back as one of the brothers dropped down, hoping to crush him. Though he missed, he quickly adjusted himself and lunged forward, his iron claw close to Naruto's throat. A sudden force gripped his leg and slammed him against a nearby tree, Naruto apparently bringing his tail in play. What Naruto didn't expect was the second brother that rammed him from the side, his iron claw making contact and piercing Naruto's abdomen. The ninja felt the claws pierce the blonde kid and looked up TP glimpsed the pain he loved to see on an enemy's face when he struck them. Naruto's expression was a complete blank. It wasn't the claw that planted itself in his stomach that bothered him, no, it was the thing he felt clawing its way out of his chest that bothered him. Whatever it was big, and the claws hurt like hell. Instead of seeing a scared kid in pain that realized he was in over his head, the cloaked assassin noticed something bulging out of the blonde's trench coat. A large hiss then emitted from within the boy's coat, and the ninja suddenly felt like running far from this strange blonde kid. But his claws weren't budging as he tried to pull back, only then did he notice that the blonde kid had him firmly grasped by the wrist. "You're not going anywhere, mammal." Naruto used his free hand to undo the button that kept his coat closed, and a large reptilian head emerged, and like a flash had bitten through the ninja's arm, severing it from the claw that wounded Naruto. "Brother." The ninja tried desperately to crawl backwards and away from this nightmarish boy, the pain from losing his arm more unbearable than anything he had ever felt before. "Can I have this? One. Dear brother?" Naruto merely nodded as he wrenched the iron claw from his stomach. The reptilian monster now had a limb through the hole as it squeezed its way out of the portal in Naruto's chest, and was free after a few seconds, standing on two powerful hind legs, each equipped with a switchblade toe. With another inhuman hiss, the reptile sprang toward the wounded ninja, its teeth cutting through him like he was made of tissue. Naruto only watched as blood splattered everywhere. Then a single drop of the ninja's blood flew in his direction, him completely unaware of it, his mouth slightly open due to his fascination in the new creature that had emerged from within him. In the spirit realm, Ryuza noticed the drop of blood heading toward Naruto, and an immediate fear took hold of him as he tried to warn Naruto. "Naruto, close your mouth, hurry." Too late, the drop of blood had made contact with Naruto's tongue as if its projection there was meant to be. For 1 second Naruto heard Ryuza's warning. Then he felt something warm touch his tongue. At first it tasted odd and metallic. The next second that same odd, metallic taste was replaced by something that made him forget ramen completely. Wow. Naruto then noticed the second ninja picking himself up, completely unaware of the danger that he was now in. Every muscle in Naruto's body tensed, the human skin that covered his true form tearing off in places. Naruto's eyes turned green and reptilian again as he analyzed the unaware ninja as something else besides an opponent. Within an instant Naruto was speeding toward the ninja, who now took notice of him, the fear in his eyes only making Naruto speed up. There was only the sounds of blood splattering as Naruto thrusted his left hand, now completely void of the human covering, into the ninja's shoulder, and his body slamming into the ninja's with so much force the two went hurtling into the bushes. The single demon brother now pinned to the ground, and a clawed hand in his shoulder looked up at Naruto as the boy used his other hand to tear off the human mask that covered his real face, the green eyes now tinted red seeing right into his soul, and the mouth opening to reveal sharp teeth. A single terrified tear ran down the ninja's face as the monster under the guise of a blonde boy brought its teeth upon him. 2 minutes later, Naruto finally came down from the almighty high that seemed to come from nowhere. He couldn't really remember what had happened exactly, but blurred images flew around in his head. Then he noticed the blood on his scale-covered hands, and the corpse of the ninja he had thrown against a tree to keep him busy. The ninja's body was covered in blood, and he seemed to have been eaten by something, and that's when the pieces all began to fit. "I did this." The bipedal reptile that had escaped from his chest during the fight made its way through the bushes toward him, its maw also covered in blood. "You also have feasted. Well, brother, ISSS. Time. I returned home." Naruto felt the portal widen, and instead of clawing its way back in, the creature's shape seemed to warp and enter back into his chest, leaving the confused boy all alone. Deep within Naruto's mind, oh, now that was just poetry in action, pure and simple. The sadistic voice that belonged to the nine-tailed scourge echoed throughout the room he was held in, the reptiles that now populated the room on the other side of the gate paying little to no attention to him. "Seriously, did any of you guys see the way he bit through that chump's throat? I swear he takes after me in some weird way." The fox's evil laughter seemed to unsettle a few of the other residents as they went back into the hole from whence they came. "Ah, you guys are no fun. Geez, I've had more interesting conversations with the skeletons on my side of the cage. Naruto, I'm sorry that had happened the way it did. I was hoping it wouldn't be a problem, but it would seem your tenant's maliciousness has no bounds even while sealed. Naruto, recognizing Ryuza's voice, felt a little relieved. At least now he could get a few answers hopefully. What happened to me? When you first tasted blood, the reptilian urges that now coexist with your once human ones became harder to control. Add that with your affliction, and it became too much for even me to control. Naruto's blank face showed how little that really explained to him. In short form, you gave in to bloodlust, and directed all that primal fury on that miserable mammal. Hope he tasted good. Standing up, pulling up his hood to hide his face, and cleaning the blood off him, Naruto merely walked back to where he left the group. Well, uncontrollable bloodlust aside, it tasted better than 8 bowls of pork ramen combined. The maniacal smile glowed pearly white in the darkness that his hood provided for face. Back at the group, Sakura couldn't even think straight. She was so scared. Not only did she watch her supposed unstoppable sensei torn to bits by 2 ninja, but had to witness Sasuke flinch in fear when he should have showed just how great she knew he was. And to make all matters worse, Naruto had tackled both ninja alone, and she had no idea what may have happened to him, or even worse still, what may happen to them. You know, Sakura, if you hold your breath too long you may end up passing out on us. Eek! Sakura jumped an impressive 12 feet into the air from voice that appeared from nowhere. Oh, sorry about that, didn't mean to scare you there. Sakura turned to see Team 7's one and only silver-haired Jonin with a cheerful expression on his barely visible face. What, did you really think I was dead? Come on, you don't get where I'm at with just luck. Well, if you're all done kidding around here, I'd like to know whether I'm safe or not. Chipped in the very man they were sworn to protect. Sakura and Kakashi noticed the old man hiding behind a nearby tree, his eyes looking in every direction to detect some unknown assailant. You can rest assured, Tazuna, you're in no danger now. I'm sure Naruto won't go dying on us anytime soon, and though he may have frozen up on us, I'm just as sure that Sasuke would have been of great help if the need had been so. Sasuke at the moment merely stood there trying to look uninterested, though on the inside he was furious at himself for freezing up, and Naruto for stealing the show the way he did. How the hell did he do that while all I was able to do was stand there in fear? Now then, I think we'll get some answers once I've had a word or two with these ninja. Now where did Naruto go off to? Somebody looking for me? Naruto walked out of the bushes nonchalantly, though his entire body was hidden under the large trench coat he wore, something that did not go unnoticed by a certain one-eyed ninja. Naruto, there you are, good to see you're alive. Now where are those 2 ninja? I'll need to question them to figure out why they were attacking us. Naruto pulled back his hood, revealing his human face, and a sinister smile. I'm afraid they won't be answering questions anymore. I guess I overdid it a bit. Kakashi couldn't help but notice the pure malice that laced the boy's words. Well, I'll be the judge of that, plus we'll need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Also, Tazuna, you'll have some explaining to do when I get back. Kakashi made his way off the path to where Naruto had came from, leaving the others to mull over what Naruto meant by his choice of words. A few minutes later, Kakashi returned, his appearance the same except his pale face, and his refusal to look anyone in the eye. Well, from what I could figure out, those 2 used to be the famous Demon Brothers, 2 missing mist ninja. And from what I've seen, they were here to kill our dear bridge builder. The question now is why? All eyes were then fixed on the fidgeting old man who, after taking another swig of alcohol before breaking down in front of them. Words cannot express how sorry I am, but I did what I had to for my people. You see, ever since the vicious gangster Gato took over our island, our economy has deteriorated into almost nothing. We could not afford to pay you the amount needed for a true escort mission due to our low funds, and since it is my duty to oversee the construction of the great bridge that will free my people, it is my life that is most at stake. The pleading look in Tazuna's eyes were enough to have Sakura sold, and Sasuke still needed a chance to redeem his past freeze up, which left it down to Kakashi and Naruto. Kakashi would have gladly accepted off the bat, but then he still had to mull over what he had just seen and how Naruto of all people could be capable of such a thing. Well then, how about we let Naruto decide for his team? All eyes were on a certain blonde who had been quiet the entire time. After a long pause, Naruto finally spoke. Will there be others like them? Kakashi made a mental note to find an appropriate time to talk to Naruto about what had happened. Yes, there will be. Interested? A smile began growing on Naruto's face as he imagined all of the potential enemies he may face, and if they all tasted better than pork ramen. Oh yes, shall we continue then? Meanwhile in the land of waves, a lone figure stood on the shore of the island, a gigantic sword strapped to his back, and an unblinking gaze set upon the horizon. All was quiet except the soothing sound of the tide, that is until the figure spoke. It would seem our comrades have failed their mission. Another figure appeared next to the first, a tracker ninja's mask covering her face. Good, I was beginning to grow bored just sitting around anyway. A cold wave of killer intent swept over the two figures. You know Haku, this may be a spot of good luck for us. The positive tone in the first figure's voice unsettled the second figure slightly. Why is that? The first figure laughed a little before answering. I smell blood. Annoyance. If there was anything Naruto felt right now nagging him to the bridge of sanity, it was that feeling. Not only was he annoyed by the fact that he had all eyes directed at him due to the earlier battle, which unsettled him greatly. He was also annoyed by the pitiful amount of killer intent Sasuke tried sending his way, and most of all Sakura was trying to force small talk, again. So I think we handled ourselves pretty well in our first enemy ninja encounter. What do you guys think? There was a long pause before anyone answered, and the reply came from the least wanted person. Well, if you ask me, it went terribly. First of all, your boss there looked like he got torn to pieces, then the dark-haired one froze up like a popsicle. It was Blondie over there that did all the work. Tazuna's words struck pretty hard to some fragile egos, and worst of all, it made Naruto the center of attention again. That's right, you took both of those ninja all by yourself, Naruto, you must have gotten lucky or something. Sakura's know-it-all voice was like a nail on the blackboard of Naruto's mind as he tried to ignore the entire conversation. Come on Naruto, tell us how you did. The attention centered on Naruto was intensified, much to his distress. Yeah Naruto, clue us in, I'd like to know just how you did that to the demon brothers back there. Naruto immediately caught the double meaning behind Kakashi's words. Thinking quickly, he set up a sound reply. Well, all I can really say is that I sorta acted on instinct, you know, guess I'm a natural. Everyone seemed to buy Naruto's answer, though Sasuke continued to glare at him, and Kakashi gave him a look that said, I'm not buying it. Anyways, what I'd like to know is why Sasuke froze up in the first place. I wouldn't have had to do all the work if he wasn't such a coward. What was that loser? Sasuke, outraged by the remark, turned red due to the embarrassment of being reminded how he choked during the fight. You just got lucky that time. Next time you'll be the one watching when I show you just how much I outclass you dead last. Naruto merely laughed in response, which only angered Sasuke even more. Now both of you calm down, this isn't the time for you two to be arguing like children. And Naruto, you shouldn't poke fun at Sasuke just because of a minor hesitation, everyone goes through it. The seriousness in Kakashi's voice ended the argument instantly. Soon enough the group had made it to the shoreline, where they traveled on boat to the land hidden in the waves. Elsewhere. Now would you look at that, he likes the taste of flesh. I think I'm starting to rub off on him little by little. The nine-tailed fox's demonic laughter echoed throughout the room as he listened to his container's current thoughts with a crude radio. I gotta say Ryuza, I like your work, though I'm glad I gave you a hand in some of the fine details. A noise from the corner of the room caught the demon's attention. Well, speak of the devil. Ryuza emerged from the hole the other reptiles had dug. Though he was in his smaller form, he was no less powerful. Yes Kyuubi, I figured it was about time you and me had a talk. Back to Naruto and company. The group had just made it to the island, and were currently headed to where Tazuna said he lived when Naruto's senses picked up another presence. Hey everyone, hold on a minute, I think I heard something. The rest of the team stopped immediately, everyone looking around for any would-be attackers. Let's see what we have here. Naruto suddenly leapt into a nearby bush. There was a strange noise followed by the sound of movement behind the bushes. After a few minutes Naruto emerged. Sorry guys, my mistake. So then Naruto, what did you catch? Kakashi mistook the red on Naruto's face as him blushing in embarrassment. With a sheepish look on his face, Naruto slowly reached behind the bush, and pulled out a red and white hair. That's odd, I've never seen a red and white rabbit before. Well, it was all white to begin with, Kakashi-sensei. Though on the outside Naruto looked embarrassed, he was quite the opposite in his head. Damn, a few more minutes and I could have eaten the little morsel. Everyone else looked at Naruto with disapproval, with Sakura calling him a bunny-killing monster, and Sasuke commenting that all Naruto was capable of killing was a defenseless hare. Naruto quickly wiped the blood off his face, before anyone got wise to what it really was. A hare wouldn't have white fur unless it was during the cold season, and it's in the middle of the warm season. That must mean, oh no. Everyone get down now. Everyone ducked down onto the ground at the sound of their squad captain's command. A second later, a gigantic sword flew past where their heads would have been. When it finally latched onto a tree, a lone shinobi was there standing on the hilt. So then you saw past my trap, not bad, though I doubt you'll make it out of here alive. The shinobi then sent a huge wave of killer intent toward the group, effectively freezing most of them still out of fear. So it seems those two were able to resist my killer intent. Kakashi wasn't troubled by the surge of killer intent sent toward the group, though he was surprised that Naruto also seemed unaffected as well. A thick mist seemed to appear from nowhere and surrounded the group, keeping their enemy hidden. This one is interesting. He uses killing intent to immobilize his targets. Then Naruto suddenly became aware of a presence right behind him. He had barely a moment to step to the side, dodging what would have been a mortal blow from the shinobi's sword. What he hadn't realized was that his avoidance of the sword left him open from the left, an opportunity his opponent used. Before he even knew what had happened, Naruto now had a kunai to his throat, the shinobi's breath right on his neck. "You smell of blood, boy. Have you killed anyone recently?" The ninja expected the boy to just stand there in fear. What he didn't expect was a wide smile to form on the blonde's face. "Actually yes, a little earlier today to be exact. Brothers who fight together die together." The boy's words caught him so off guard he didn't even see Kakashi coming. Thwack. Now what do we have here if it isn't Zabuza Momochi, also known as the Demon of the Hidden Mist? Kakashi's punch had knocked Zabuza a good 10 meters away, though the ninja stood up like he hadn't been struck at all. This could get bad. I'll have to be on my toes to keep him from getting that close to the genin again. My is that you Kakashi Hitaki, otherwise known as the copycat ninja. I almost feel honored to have the pleasure of facing you on such a fine day. Zabuza then turned to liquid, and splashed onto the ground, though his laughter could be heard all around the group. Sasuke and Sakura had by now gotten over their immobilization, and began taking formation, Sakura in front of Tazuna. Sasuke next to Naruto. Damn water clones, this just got that much harder. Thinking quickly, Kakashi threw a kunai to the left, striking a Zabuza water clone in the head, dispersing it. And we're right next to a body of water, he has the advantage here. Zabuza from a safe distance was musing over what the blonde genin had said. Perhaps further inspection is in order. Forming a plan in his mind, Zabuza created more water clones, and watched as they charged toward the silver-haired Jonin. Can't have you getting in the way, Kakashi. 3 of the water clones engaged the Jonin, keeping his attention as he tried to fight all 3 at the same time, the other water clone charging toward the group. Sasuke saw the enemy coming. This time he wouldn't be shown up by Naruto. In fact, he planned on taking down the shinobi on his own. Watch and learn, loser. Rushing forward, Sasuke closed the distance between him and the clone. With a quick jump to the side, he was able to avoid the sword that crashed down right where he stood. Using his momentum, he performed a quick knee thrust that caught his enemy off guard. To his horror, what should have been a fatal blow only seemed to daze his opponent. The clone cracked his neck laughing while he did, and shook his finger in a fashion. This may be harder than I thought. Naruto, on the other hand, had his own troubles to deal with. While the clone fought Sasuke, the real Zabuza appeared behind Naruto, and struck him from behind with his fist. "Hey kid, what's a obvious killer like you doing hanging around these chumps?" Zabuza aimed a kick toward the down blonde, only for him to catch his foot, and throw him onto the ground. "I have my reasons for wasting time with these mammals, what about you?" Zabuza grabbed Naruto's shin as he sprang to his feet, and slammed the blonde into a nearby tree, smirking at the boy's pained expression. "Well, I was just thinking you should ditch these losers, and join me, kid. I could use a weapon with potential such as yourself." Zabuza let a large wicked grin spread on his face. He was really going to enjoy this. "Damn it, another water clone. If this is going to end anytime soon, I'll need to find the real one." Kakashi ducked under a viscous slash from the third water clone's sword. With a quick upward thrust, Kakashi sliced open the clone's neck, destroying it. "I can't keep this up forever, then again neither can he." Kakashi noticed the water clone that was fighting Naruto, watching it take a direct blow without dispersing. He realized that Naruto was facing the real Zabuza. Enough games, it's time I get serious. Kakashi pulled up his headband, exposing his left eye, which unlike his right was red and had 3 strange dots that spun around his pupil. So are you interested, kid? Zabuza at the moment had Naruto by the neck, and pinned against a tree, his other hand casually holding his sword like it weighed nothing. Despite his situation, Naruto couldn't help but smile, though they were enemies. And currently locked in combat, Naruto was actually enjoying the conversation he was having with Zabuza. Sasuke at the moment could have been doing better at the time. Though he was giving it his best shot, none of his moves seemed to have much effect on the water clone. Oh come on, I know I can do better than this. With a pained grunt, he forced himself forward, and tried to face the clone hand to hand, which resulted in him being thrown to the ground again. This sucks. Sakura, watching the entire time, had no idea what to do. It was her mission to keep the bridge builder safe, but her beloved Sasuke was being beaten to a pulp. Wait. What he needs is a distraction. Sakura, thinking, quickly reached into her bag, and pulled out a strange black item. Demon Wind Shuriken, Windmill of Shadows. Using all her strength, Sakura threw the large shuriken at the water clone, who noticed it out of the corner of its eye. As it attempted to dodge the shuriken, it gave Sasuke the opening he needed to finish the job. Fire style. Fireball Jutsu. The clone was instantly destroyed by the intense flame. Seeing that his opponent was defeated, Sasuke took a moment to rest. Let's see you top that, Naruto. Speaking of which, Naruto at the time was watching Zabuza's and Kakashi's with great interest. On one hand, he wanted his squad leader to win, so they could continue with the mission. On the other, he was interested in Zabuza's offer, which might help Naruto with completing his own agenda. At the moment, both shinobi were engaged in a water jutsu battle, both summoning water dragons, and they seemed pretty evenly matched until Kakashi used a water-style technique that nearly drowned everyone. I won't be defeated by the likes of you, Kakashi Hata. Zabuza's sentence was cut short by 2 senbon needles that pierced his neck. As he fell to the ground, his eyes met Naruto's eyes, his lips forming unheard words. We shall meet again. A second ninja appeared next to Zabuza's corpse. From the looks of things, it was a female, though her face was covered by a hunter nin mask. It seems I have finally completed my mission. The hunter nin turned toward Kakashi and his squad. Thank you for your assistance. I will now have to destroy the body at a discreet location. The masked ninja then heaved Zabuza's corpse onto her shoulders and disappeared. Well team, it would seem we've won this battle. Now let's get to Tazuna's place before oh no. Kakashi collapsed onto the ground from exhaustion. Apparently the battle had taken more out of him than expected. Now all that was left was a tired team of genin, and one freaked out bridge builder. I'm not carrying him. Meanwhile elsewhere. Geez Haku, you almost killed me there. At the moment, the hunter nin identified as Haku was tending to her master, who she had put in a death-like state using careful aim. Seriously, you have the bedside manner of a butcher. Ow. Zabuza's last comment had slightly agitated Haku. Her revenge was in the form of viciously pulling the senbon needles out of her superior's neck, making sure Zabuza felt tremendous pain. Sorry Zabuza, it's hard to pull these out carefully when you're making smart remarks. Zabuza merely rolled his eyes. Give a girl a few senbon needles, and a hunter nin mask, and suddenly she develops an attitude. Ow. Haku took a moment to look over her master. The fight with Kakashi had roughed him up a little, and her senbon needles had did more damage than she had expected. From the look of things, you're going to need some serious rest for at least a week here. Zabuza merely grunted in reply. Though he knew she was right, he still didn't have to like it. Well then, it sounds like it'll be your job to keep a tab on that blonde kid for me then. The boy has great potential. Hey, he reminds me of me when I was his age. Haku nodded in agreement before helping her master to his feet. They still had to get Zabuza back to the hideout. Back to our hero. Naruto and company had successfully made it to Tazuna's house, and everyone was enjoying a much-needed rest in one form or another. With Kakashi unconscious still, the genin had to find other ways to amuse themselves. Sakura was making nice with the residents of the house. Tazuna's daughter Tsunami was very thankful for her father's safe return, and had treated Kakashi's wounds. Apparently there was a grandson somewhere in the house, though he hadn't made an appearance yet. Sasuke went to find an empty room to rest in, though he wouldn't admit that he was a little worn out from the fight. Naruto himself was sitting on the roof of Tazuna's house where he could get some solitude. Inside Naruto's mindscape, your arrogance is something to be marveled, Kyuubi. Ryuza's statement only earned him a deep laugh from the monstrous fox. Oh really, says the pint-sized newt, who just recently moved in. I mean seriously, I've been here all by my poor lonesome for this child's entire life. Then you show up and try to act like Mr. Bossy. The great fox, though enjoying the heated debate, was starting to grow tired of the lizard's commands. Ryuza took a moment to think of a proper reply. He knew he was getting nowhere with this argument. Already he had missed the recent battle with the assassin shinobi that had attacked Naruto's team, and he was eager to find out how the battle had turned out. On the other hand, he could understand the point that the equally powerful demon was making. The only available option was to make an agreement, for Naruto's sake at least. How about we share the boy then? Ryuza's reply was a bold one, and undoubtedly unexpected by the looks of his surrounding vassals, and the somewhat startled fox. Your boldness is something to be marveled, Ryuza. The Kyuubi's response was just as unexpected. Then again, so was the deep chuckling that followed after from the fox's cell before he continued. But you may have a point, no reason we can't all just get along. For now, though I think we'll have to iron out the details at another time. It would seem, our boy is calling for you, unless you'd like me to bring him here. Ryuza could feel Naruto's thoughts reaching out to him. Though he was surprised the Kyuubi could hear the boy's thoughts when they were being projected to him, the fox had a point. Perhaps another time. I do not believe the boy is ready to meet you just yet, but the time draws near. The great reptile headed back to the tunnel that bridged the two beasts to Naruto's mindscape. I will return when the opportunity presents itself. Farewell for now, Kyuubi. Even as he descended back to his own realm, Ryuza could hear the fox's demonic laughter, and tidbits of its dark influence. Back to Naruto. Ryuza, where are you? Naruto was starting to lose his last nerve. Zabuza's proposal had gotten Naruto thinking about a few things, and though he wouldn't admit out loud he wanted the old lizard's advice on the matter. Sorry about that, kid, I was caught up in some other business. Now what's with all the racket? About damn time, you old gecko. Were you paying attention to that last fight? Not really, I only noticed small tidbits of it. What happened? Naruto then went over how the battle had began, and ended the conversation he had with Zabuza being by far the most interesting. So then, did the rogue nin's request appeal to you then? Yes, it did. If I'm going to have to travel with humans, it ought as well be ones with similar ideals. It's a shame that Zabuza had met his end the way he did. Ryuza had to agree with the blonde. From what he had said, this Zabuza was an rare individual, and it was unfortunate that a potential ally had been taken out so early in the game. Well, there isn't much else you can do right now, Naruto, so it's best we just move on. I'm sure your team is wondering where you are right now. Ah crud, you're right, I completely forgot about them. Well, I better get going then. Naruto stood up and walked down the roof till he reached the second-floor window of the house, then climbed inside quietly. Once his eyes had adjusted to the dark room, he realized he was in the same room Kakashi was currently resting in. The silver-haired ninja in his current state was an easy target, something Naruto quickly noted. Being the only one within the room besides the sleeping Kakashi, Naruto couldn't help but feel curious about the one-eyed ninja's hidden face. Couldn't hurt to take a quick look, right? Kakashi had been awake the moment the blonde genin had crept in through the window, his sharpened senses sending off little alarms in his head that danger was nearby. He took a moment to open his eye, quickly getting a look at the familiar blonde who was currently caught in self-thought. Now that he knew who was in the room with him, he closed his eye, letting his other senses help keep a tab on Naruto while he continued to appear like he was sleeping. What is that boy up to? He remembered the earlier incident with the demon brothers. No human could have done that. For now he would have to wait and see what the strange boy would do. Naruto slowly crept closer to the resting Jonin. Once he was at the right distance, he silently began climbing up the wall of the room. His plan was to climb to the ceiling and use his tail to unmask the Cyclops. As he crept closer now on the ceiling of the room, he was just about to let his tail loose when he heard footsteps from outside the room, and they were heading in the room's direction. Shit, looks like this will have to wait for another time then. Naruto quickly crawled back to the window, now forsaking silence for speed. The clicking noises of his claws gripping the surface to keep him on the ceiling as he moved piqued Kakashi's curiosity as he opened his eye to watch Naruto crawl out the window. What the hell? A few hours later, Before getting up to see how his genin team were doing, Kakashi had come upon the realization that the hunter nin was not who she pretended to be, since a full-fledged hunter ninja would have destroyed Zabuza's corpse the moment he was dead, which meant that Zabuza was still alive somewhere, and that meant he would have to get his squad ready for another encounter. Now team, it would seem that Zabuza hasn't died as we may have thought. I believe the hunter nin that attacked him was probably an ally of his that used the disguise to mislead us. The genin all had their own separate reactions, from Sakura's gasp of surprise, and Sasuke's small smirk obviously being okay with the chance to fight a strong enemy, and further his skills. Naruto himself said nothing, and pretended not to care, though on the inside he was jumping for joy. Because of this, I think it's necessary to teach you a chakra exercise that will come in handy in future battles. Kakashi then led the group to a large tree outside of the house. Now you see, by focusing chakra to your feet you can actually do some interesting things such as this. Kakashi then proceeded to walk up the tree with no problem at all, as if it was the easiest thing in the world. Let's see you guys give it a try. 1 hour later. This seriously sucks. Though climbing a tree with the use of his claws would have been mere child's play, Naruto knew he couldn't do that in front of his team, so he was forced to do things the hard way, by doing as his sensei had said, and focusing just enough chakra to his feet that he would stick to the tree, but not so much that it would blast him off the tree like it had done so many times before. Laying on the ground exhausted, Naruto took a look at his latest slash mark on the tree he was climbing. Though it was nearly to the top, it wasn't as high as Sakura's, though it was still a good deal higher than Sasuke's. Thank goodness for that, right? A sudden movement in his chest alerted him that a familiar friend had returned. The small lizard that normally accompanied Naruto poked its head out from underneath Naruto's large trench coat. Alright little guy, we'll give it one more try then, okay? The lizard nodded its head, then climbed to his shoulders, where it loosely wrapped its tail around Naruto's neck, and placed its head on his own head. Naruto laughed to himself, the lizard's antic amusing him greatly. He then stood up and got ready for a good running start, pumping a good amount of chakra to his feet. Let's make it hot. Unknown to Naruto and his fellow genin, they were being watched by a somewhat familiar figure. Let's see if you're really worth Zabuza-san's time. Haku was seriously stumped. She would follow any order given by Zabuza without question, but keeping an eye on the blonde genin he thought so highly about was just so odd. So far he had shown no abilities beyond that of any average ninja his age, and that irked Haku a bit. Why would her great and mighty master show an interest in someone so plain? The only positive going for him was his handsome face and haunting eyes, in her opinion. Good looks aside, it was obvious to her that this boy would be of no use to Zabuza. Perhaps to prove it she would challenge the blonde to truly test his worth. This still sucks. A whole day had passed by, and Naruto was still short 7 feet from Sakura's slash mark. To make things worse, Sasuke was starting to catch up to him after having a private conversation with Sakura. Naruto had thought about doing the same, but was set on doing it himself. It was now midnight, and both of his teammates had retired, for their own reasons. Sakura because she was tired, and Sasuke because he felt self-assured that he would catch up to and pass Naruto's progress the next day. Fine by me, I'd rather train alone. With that, Naruto went back to work, oblivious to his hidden spectator. Instincts suddenly kicking in, Naruto jumped to the right, narrowly avoiding a flurry of senbon needles from seemingly nowhere. A sudden movement to his left alerted him that more of the deadly projectiles were closing in. Without much time to react, Naruto pivoted and crossed his arms in front defensively, allowing them to take the full impact of the attack. Despite the dozens of needles sticking into his 2 arms, Naruto showed no signs of distress. In fact, an eerie grin was forming on his face. His eyes flickering from their mock innocent blue to their true predatory green. Not bad, but judging from your injuries, this little trial was over before it even started. A smooth voice echoed throughout the forest clearing. Even with his heightened senses, Naruto was having a hard time pinpointing its place of origin. From her hiding place, Haku debated between finishing the clearly outmatched genin off, or investigating his abilities further. Perhaps his talents are centered around taijutsu, or maybe even just a high tolerance to pain. Haku's musings were interrupted by a sound emitting from the wounded ninja. Lowering his arms to his sides, Naruto revealed that the sound coming from him was his own laughter, starting from a hushed snicker, and gradually growing to a menacing chuckle. Over? Oh no, this is just the beginning, my friend. As for these pinpricks here, Naruto flexed his muscles slightly, which in turn sent the needles shooting from his arms. You'll find that they are a little ineffective. Perhaps if a stronger opponent were throwing them they would do noticeable damage. To further press his point, Naruto stretched his arms and moved them about, showing that they worked fine. Tough guy, huh? Alright, let's see how you like this then, smart ass. Haku released another flurry of senbon toward the blonde, which was avoided easily by said genin. While Naruto moved out of the way of the incoming volley, he felt a presence speeding toward him from above. Naruto had little time to raise his right arm to block a kick aimed for his head, then he shifted his weight so he could counterattack with his left arm. His punch was easily deflected, and before he knew it a fist had smashed straight into his face, doing more damage than he expected this enemy was capable of. Not bad, but your attacks leave many openings. It's almost like you wanted me to attack you there. Haku's moment was interrupted by a tear-jerking pain resonating from her arm. It felt like her forearm had been caught in a bear trap. Looking at her arm, Haku realized that her adversary had moved past her fist and was currently holding her injured limb in his teeth. What? Quote, after taking the hit to the face, Naruto had moved his body around enough to get past the attacker's fist, and saw a great opportunity to really sink his teeth into the fight. The enemy's blood from the wounded arm seeped into Naruto's mouth, the taste sending a shocking sensation throughout his body. Feeling his vision reddening and growing hazy, Naruto shook his head with Haku's arm still caught in his teeth, the scene resembling how a dog would look shaking a rag doll. Feeling his adversary's arm pulling out of her socket, he opened his jaws, releasing her, and tossing her into a nearby tree with a loud thud. Naruto's eyes glowed eerie green as he watched his prey slowly stand back up. Back in Naruto's head, the Kyuubi could feel Naruto giving into his bloodlust again, brought on by the assassin's blood entering his mouth. Oh, it's so much fun watching that boy tear something to shreds. I hope he decapitates that poor fool. Quote, a familiar smell invaded his nostrils, signaling the return of Ryuza. You'll have to wait for another time, Fox. I won't allow the boy to be overtaken by his predatory instincts this time. Ryuza began radiating a blue chakra, which spread throughout the sewer, though stopping short of the fox's cage. Oh, you're such a killjoy, you old dinosaur. Let the kid have some fun. The Kyuubi's remark went ignored for a few moments until the great lizard replied, I want to see our tenant triumph on his own. Quote, back to the fight. Haku cursed her own foolishness. If Zabuza had thought him worthy, of course the genin had to have some redeeming attributes. She had allowed herself to drop her guard, and it could have cost her dearly. Goddamn. That kid really did a number on my arm. Doesn't feel like anything is broken, but it'll sure sting like hell. Taking a deep intake of breath, Haku steadied her mind, once again regaining her focus. Gritting her teeth, Haku forced her arm back into its socket, the pain only strengthening her resolve. I must hand it to you. I was completely unprepared for such an attack, but it'll take more than a few lucky moves from a strange genin to beat me. Haku's words seemed to have an effect on the blonde ninja watching her, though she couldn't help but gasp as he smiled, showing a mouth full of fangs, and began tearing off his skin. Well, I can't help but agree with you about that, friend. But the only problem with your statement is I'm not some strange genin. Hell, I'm not even human. With that, Naruto began tearing the skin off his arms. The loud tearing noises obviously unsettled his attacker. Naruto then tore off his human face, exposing the emerald scales that hid behind the thin mask. I'll hold off a bit on fully transforming. Best to keep an ace or two up my sleeve just in case. At the moment, Naruto's revealed face looked similar to his human face. The only changes were in place of human skin, scales dominated his body. His eyes were more slitted, his hair remained on his head, his facial structure remained the same despite the more reptilian appearance. Are you ready for another round, or would you like to surrender? Quote, back at Zabuza's hideout. Haku, where are you? The demon of the mist was currently wondering where his apprentice had gone off to. She should have returned by now with a report on the blonde genin's abilities by now. A long silence settled in as Zabuza tried to think of any possible reasons for Haku being this late. She wouldn't. Fuck, she did. Instantly Zabuza's mind went to damage control mode, worry for Haku's and the possible new recruit's health, and concern about how Haku's actions may influence his master scheme overtaking him. Damn it, that kids these days can be such a pain in the ass. Zabuza slowly limped toward the edge of his hideout. The damage from the earlier battle still pained him greatly, but he would have to force through it if he was to salvage his plans. Back to the fight, again. Damn it. It was growing apparent that facing this freakish opponent in taijutsu was a big mistake. He was just as fast as her, and was perhaps on the same level of strength as her master. Ducking as fast as she could, Haku just barely dodged the scale-covered fist that was barreling towards her. Using the opening presented, Haku unleashed a series of punches and jabs to the monster's exposed abdomen. The growl of pain he emitted proved that she was at least doing some kind of damage. With all the strength she could muster, Haku ended her attack with an uppercut, knocking the monster off his feet. She's good. I think that last blow actually knocked a tooth loose. With a grunt of irritation, Naruto spat a fang out, though he could already feel another one starting to grow back into its place. She's still able to keep even with me even in this state. Looks like I might need to get clever. In the blink of an eye, Naruto was back on his feet, his hands forming the necessary signs for his chosen jutsu. So it's going down like that, is it? Haku noticed the hand signs her opponent was forming, and heard him hiss the words for a clone jutsu. Two can play at that game, and I know how to cheat. The temperature around Haku suddenly started to drop drastically, as she unleashed her Kekkei Genkei. With an audible poof, 3 more Narutos came into existence, and charged forward, the original staying back to watch the outcome. The first to reach her lunged forward, but was simply sidestepped, and then ceased to exist when an ice-covered fist slammed into his throat. The other 2 stopped in their tracks, the unexpected demise of their comrade making them cautious. Taking the offensive, Haku tossed a handful of senbon needles, and while the clones were distracted with avoiding the attack, Haku slipped behind one and dispatched the clone with the ice-covered chop to the skull. With a well-timed jump, Haku avoided the attempted leg sweep from the remaining clone, and delivered a lethal axe kick ending its life. How the hell is she able to create ice like that? Naruto in all of his life had never seen such a technique, and to be honest, the new threat presented before him was making him edgy. You ready for round 2? Haku's only reply was the forming of ice around both of her arms, forming into razor-sharp blades. Dashing towards each other, the 2 combatants began a lethal dance of slashing, blocking, and avoiding incoming attacks. Haku's ice was just as sharp as Naruto's claws and fangs, and much to his surprise, she seemed to actually be picking up speed. Small cuts began to dot Naruto's scales, some even threatening to go deep enough to draw blood. In reality, it was Naruto who had began to slow down. Unbeknownst to him, the cold radiating from Haku was beginning to gather onto him, and form ice around his body. Though not immobilizing him, it was gradually slowing his movements. Forming a risky strategy in his mind, Naruto purposely overthrew a punch, leaving his chest exposed to an attack. Seeing the opening, Haku jabbed forward, hoping to impale her opponent and end this fight. The sound of flesh being pierced was music to her ears. It would seem our battle is over. I must admit you were quite skilled to ba. Thwack! A sudden pain cut her sentence short as a sudden force impacted against her skull. The Hunter Nin mask made an audible cracking noise. You're right, this fight is over. Good thing I used my head. Despite the ice blade piercing his chest, Naruto still had the resolve to grip Haku's arm and pull her into a headbutt. His opponent still in his grasp and obviously dazed, Naruto reared back his head and charged forward again, this time letting go of her arm. The resulting impact not only shattered the mask she wore into pieces, but also sent her jettisoning into the air, only for her to land in a crumpled heap a few feet away. With the fight clearly over, Naruto took his time walking toward his fallen enemy. Bringing his tail into play, Naruto used it to pick the Haku from the ground, so he could get a look at his would-be assassin's face. Whoa there, what's a beautiful face like this doing in place like this? Despite his age, Naruto could easily establish the difference between a cute face and a beautiful one. Though her eyes were closed, Haku was starting to come back into consciousness. The sounds she emitted showed her current level of pain. Opening her eyes with a grunt of pain, Haku began evaluating her current situation. The blonde-haired monster before her was apparently staring at her with a weird look in his eyes, and had bound her with what looked like a tail growing from behind him, and had her held in the air. Then the throbbing pain in her skull came back with a vengeance. Ow, Kami, that hurts. Quote, "Ah, you want me to kiss it better?" Quote. Haku's eye narrowed in irritation at the blonde's comment. Doing her best to not make eye contact with him to make matters worse, her face was starting to heat up alarmingly. Bite me, numbskull. Despite her brave demeanor, Haku couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that was overtaking her. Right before her eyes, Naruto tugged out the shard of ice still remaining in his chest with an irritated hiss, and the wound started to slowly heal over. Naruto's face contorted to a wicked fang-filled smile, as he felt the fake human skin begin reforming around his body. Actually, that's not a terrible idea. If you're half as tasty as you are pretty, then I'm in for quite the treat. Naruto's Cheshire smile grew even more, when he noticed his captive's look of horror. It was around this time when Zabuza finally made his appearance. With an exhausted grunt, he stumbled into the clearing only to gaze upon his young apprentice being held captive by Naruto. The look on the blonde genin's face practically oozed ill intent, and then he opened his mouth to an inhuman degree, exposing his many sharp teeth. With a loud cough, Zabuza announced his presence, effectively stopping Haku from becoming a chew toy. "Well, it seems you just get more and more interesting, don't you, brat?" Zabuza shuffled forward, until he was now looming over Naruto. "Now would you please be so kind as to let go of my vassal?" Sensing that it was more a command than a request, Naruto with some annoyed hesitation dropped Haku onto the ground, earning him an amused smirk from the demon of the mist, and a hate-filled glare from his former captive. "So this belongs to you then?" Naruto's human skin had now completely grown back, giving him the appearance of a harmless blonde genin again. A simple, "Yep," from Zabuza answered his question, and the infamous assassin limped toward Haku and helped her up. "Never thought I'd see the day that my highly capable weapon would be at the mercy of a wet behind-the-ears genin with a skin condition." Zabuza continued to criticize Haku until an impatient growl of indignation was heard from Naruto. "Oh yay, that's right, you're still here, so thanks for not manhandling her too much there." Haku's face darkened a deep red, and even Naruto's face seemed to redden up a bit. "So that request for you to join me is still available, kid, you interested?" Quote, Naruto didn't really have to mull the idea over very much. In his mind, the warriors in front of him were so much more interesting than the ones he was forced to muck around with. "And if I don't like the way things start going, I'll just switch again, I guess." Having made his decision, Naruto turned toward Haku and Zabuza with a grin on his face. "Well, after much careful consideration, I've decided to grace you with my presence. My name's Naruto Uzumaki, what's your?" Quote, after a brief introduction, Zabuza quickly brought Naruto up to speed on why he was after the bridge builder, and how Naruto was going to be of help. "Alright kid, what I want is for you to be our inside man. With your help we can better know your team's weaknesses, and better exploit them when the time arrives." With a thoughtful expression, Zabuza began looking over Naruto, his eyes taking in every detail. "Tell me, boy, how is it that you're able to transform like that without the use of any jutsu?" Quote, "Let's just say that it's a natural talent given to me by some interested benefactors." Naruto, normally put off by being asked questions, found it oddly easily to reveal partial information about his condition. The amused smirk on Zabuza's face conveyed that he too understood the need to keep some things secret. "From what I gathered when I was watching him and his team, he seems to be trying to perfect his chakra control." Haku's report catching his attention, Zabuza turned his head to the tree Naruto had been trying to climb. "Oh yeah, I remember that exercise. Real pain in the ass without the proper understanding." Getting a wicked idea in his head, Zabuza decided to offer some help. "Alright, to start things off, I'll head on back to the hideout. And Haku is going to stay here and give you some advice on how to master the exercise." He could barely suppress his laughter when he saw the outraged looks upon Naruto and Haku's faces. "Play nice you two. Once you've completed the exercise, I'm hoping Kakashi will allow you some downtime, which you will spend furthering your training with me at the hideout." With a wave goodbye, Zabuza began limping back towards his base, though with an apparent skip to his step. "Just for the record, I let you win that fight, and if not for Lord Zabuza's interest in your skills, I'd kill you right where you stand." Quote, "Oh really? Well, I guess you were just pretending to be getting your ass handed to you." Naruto felt the temperature drop again, and suppressed the need to shiver. "Trust me, I hate you just as much as you hate me. I'd rather slice you up into pieces and serve you in a stew. But I'll humor your master, and allow you to help me master this technique." Quote, after a few pointers, Naruto was able to do the exercise perfectly, even scratching a slash mark into his tree higher than Sakura had done on hers. Feeling a familiar pair of claws climbing up his chest, Naruto was once again greeted by his traveling companion. You know, eventually I'm going to have to name you if we keep hanging out like this. The lizard merely climbed onto Naruto's head, which earned a quizzical look from Haku. Oh yay, I may have forgot to mention I tend to attract the company of these good-looking guys. Quote, a simple roll of the eyes was all that Haku gave as a reply, before she started heading back to her master's hideout. I believe I've stayed here long enough then, you may wish to get some rest for the training ahead. Quote, for a ice-wielding, psychopathic mammal she's not too terribly bad. Leaning against a nearby tree, Naruto watched Haku walk away, taking note of the subtle way her hips swung side to side. Plus, if I'm going to have to work with any annoying chicks, it doesn't hurt that she's easy on the eyes. Haku's head immediately turned around, a pissed-off expression on her face which was turned beet red. From anger or embarrassment, Naruto was unable to tell. Oh shit, did I say that out loud? Quote, quickly Naruto was forced to dodge to the side as a flurry of ice-covered senbon needles rained pierced into the tree he was leaning on. Taking note that Haku had stormed off angrily, Naruto took a moment to look at the spot where he was once standing. The deadly projectiles had been thrown with such precision that they actually spelled out a message into the tree. Oh yay, she totally hates my guts. Naruto looked up to his small friend for feedback, the disapproving look on its head having said enough. I can tell this will be the start of a beautiful friendship. Quote, well Naruto, it seems you've improved quite a bit since yesterday. Kakashi couldn't help but be impressed by the blonde's rapid leap in chakra control, which he was smugly displaying as he walked up the tree with barely any effort at all. Naruto's latest slash mark was at the tip-top of the tree he had been practicing on the day before. What can I say, maybe I'm just a fast learner. With a big grin on his face, Naruto did a little harmless showing off by hanging upside down on a tree branch using only chakra control to keep him in place. The disbelieving expression on his teammates' faces were absolutely priceless. Deciding to put Zabuza's plan into action, Naruto's grin changed to a slight grimace. But if I have this exercise down, what should I do while Sasuke and Sakura catch up? Sasuke scowled, feeling that there was an implied insult in Dobi's words. Sakura merely looked curious, she couldn't help but wonder at what the next step in their training would be. Well, logically I should just point him to practicing chakra control on water, but he may need more help with that. And I can't just leave the other two alone if I expect to help them catch up. Scratching his head, Kakashi decided to take the easy way out, every squad leader's ace in the hole. Well, since you're so ahead of the curve at the moment, you could take this time to meditate or further hone your unique skills. Quote, well, that plays right into Zabuza's plans. With ease, Naruto leapt from his position and landed next to the silver-haired Jonin. Sounds boring, but if it gets me away from you people, it works for me. With a carefree smile, Naruto began sauntering away, only to be stopped by a rather assertive command. Wait right there, Naruto. The blonde's eye narrowed as his teammates stomped toward him and Kakashi. Sasuke, having heard enough, felt that he had a complaint he wished to bring to attention. I don't see why he should get to goof off on his own while we just climb trees all day. Quote, I'd watch yourself, Uchiha. Someone may take that tone of voice as a challenge. Naruto's eyes locked with Sasuke's, a toothy grin spreading on his face. Naruto would never turn down a fight if offered so readily. Sasuke's glare was blocked by the figure of their sensei, who had seen enough and chosen to intervene. You can flex your egos after you've mastered the tree climbing exercise, Sasuke. Sasuke's eyes angrily flashed defiance, but with an annoyed huff he turned back toward his tree. And Naruto, please try to remember that we're on a team here, okay? Quote, Naruto turned away from the group, heading off into the forest alone. Yeah, sure we are. Quote, after a good bit of wandering off, and once he was sure no one was following him, Naruto took a moment to survey his surroundings. The trees here were a lot more dense, and a thin fog was slowly starting to spread. Feeling a sudden flash of killing intent behind him, Naruto quickly swiveled around, and just barely managed to divert an ice-covered fist from connecting with his spine. Don't you ever just say hello like a normal person? Quote, Haku just scoffed, and the ice covering her arm merely dissolved into her skin. Without even giving the blonde genin a second glance, she started walking toward a small clearing. I could have sworn someone told me that you weren't normal. Haku allowed a smirk to appear on her face as she heard Naruto hiss in irritation at being upped by his earlier declaration. My master would like to have a word with you, and he doesn't like to be kept waiting. Naruto followed Haku past the trees and into the clearing where a well-hidden hideout had been set up. As they approached the entrance, a familiar entity began speaking to him in his head. Naruto, I would advise that you let loose some of your brethren loose in this area. It would be a good idea to have our kin watching from the shadows in case this Zabuza decides to pull a fast one. Taking Ryuza's words to heart, Naruto channeled a small amount of chakra into the portal, and immediately felt reptiles begin crawling out of his chest. Without making a sound, 3 monitor lizards crawled from out of his coat, and began scaling the surrounding trees. Haku didn't seem to notice as she continued walking toward the door of the shack in front of them. Better safe than sorry, I suppose. Before opening the door, Haku turned, and looked Naruto directly into his eyes. The words that escaped her mouth were as lethal and icy as her Kekkei Genkei. You will speak to Zabuza with respect, and if you so much as sneeze out of turn, I'll use your skin for a nice pair of snakeskin boots. Naruto couldn't help but be slightly subdued by the hostile female in front of him, but within a few seconds he regained his composure. As you wish, Ice Queen, I'll be at my best behavior, I swear. Quick as lightning, Naruto closed the distance between him and Haku. He could feel her hold her breath as he whispered into her ears. But for the record, neither me or my kin are to be mistaken for a snake. We don't take kindly to ignorance, my dear. And just as fast, Naruto was back at his original distance, though his eyes had once again flashed an emerald green. Not wanting to give the blonde the satisfaction of knowing he had unnerved her greatly, Haku turned toward the door and opened it, gesturing Naruto to walk in. Once he had walked past her, Haku was able to resume breathing at a normal level. It still fried her brain to have any get that close to her, and it wasn't helping that he was just so damn handsome. Finally you arrived, Naruto. I was starting to think you had chickened out on us. Despite the bandages that adorned his body, and the bed he was laying in, the predatory grin that nestled on his mug made Zabuza practically glow with lethality. I hope getting away from your team wasn't too much of a hassle for you. Naruto merely shrugged his shoulders, and a lazy look on his face, looking completely at ease. No trouble at all. Thanks to Haku's assistance with my training, I'll have to thank her sometime. Naruto's gaze hovered over to the silent female as she stood patiently beside her master. Feeling his eyes on her, Haku's stoic face turned to a sour scowl. Good to know that you're getting along. In fact, that works with my newest update to our plan. Both Naruto and Haku looked to Zabuza, confusion etched on their faces. You see, I've been thinking, and since you can only train with us when your team is busy, I thought up a brilliant way for Haku to keep an eye on you, and provide any further assistance if needed. Haku, unable to keep her curiosity silent, was the one to ask the question. How will I be able to do that without the Jonin detecting my presence, Zabuza-sama? Zabuza chuckled sinisterly before replying, evil smile growing on his face. Easy, you'll be hiding in plain sight as Naruto's new girlfriend. Zabuza felt a twinkle in his eye as the faces of Naruto flashed from surprised to utter disbelief, and finally to outrage. It's good to be bad. Are you fucking with me? Do you seriously expect me to pretend to be this asshole's girlfriend? I hate his freaking guts. Zabuza was honestly surprised that Haku would speak to him in such a manner. At least it was twice as hilarious. I'm the one who should be pissed. I don't need this crazy ass chick following me around. Just the thought of her coming on to me makes my skin crawl. Naruto was just as upset by the turn of events, and certainly was going to announce it. Zabuza's laughter soon drowned out the two's yelling. Never before had he seen anything this funny. It wasn't long before he felt killing intent oozing from both of them, cutting his fun short. Wiping the tears from his eyes, and attempting to look like a master assassin again, Zabuza attempted to defuse the situation. Now you two, I believe you're overreacting. Now quiet down so we can move on to the next part of the plan. Though Naruto and Haku held their silence, they wouldn't stop glaring at each other and mouthing death threats. Alright, with Haku posing as your match made in heaven. Naruto, you can be assured Haku will be there to bail you out and feed you excuses to get away from your group and further our plans. Now that we have that out of the way, let's continue where we left off on your training. Zabuza eased out of his bed and walked toward the door. Naruto, would you be so kind as to show off some of your abilities? From there we can decide what you need to work on. Naruto followed Zabuza outside of the shack with a sulking Haku right behind him. Well, to tell the truth, the only real jutsu I know is the shadow clone. Besides that are just my natural abilities which you've already seen. Zabuza nodded in agreement. He couldn't help but think badly about Kakashi for now better training his genin. Alright then, let's see if you can perform this, kid. With a calming intake of breath, Zabuza began forming hand signs in rapid succession. Hidden Mist Jutsu. A thick fog suddenly started to blanket the area. Within seconds Naruto had lost sight of Zabuza and Haku. This jutsu is fundamental in my technique, kid. It allows me to assassinate any target from any angle I see fit without being seen. Zabuza's words echoed all around Naruto, making it impossible to pinpoint his location. Let's see how well you do on the receiving end. Naruto tensed up, using his heightened senses to make up for his now liable eyesight. A fluttering of cloths indicated something was approaching from his left. With quick turn he ducked and kicked out, hitting nothing. Another sound behind him had him hitting the deck and rolling to the side. Once again he saw nothing. It was as if the very mist itself was intent on striking him. Something had landed on the ground beside him and he faintly heard the swishing of clothing before he was struck in his side. Taking the blow in stride, Naruto grabbed out and managed to get a hold of his invisible assailant and pulled the figure to him. Naruto was surprised that he held in his grasp a very smug-looking Haku. Took long enough, but it seems it cost you a dozen lives until you finally captured your assassin. The mist began to vanish, and to Naruto's confusion his body had multiple blue and red markings on his body. The markings symbolize vital spots where you had been struck. For the record, the blue ones are mine. Naruto now noticed that there was at least twice as many red slash marks as there were blue ones. And the red one are one mine, of course. Zabuza's voice nearly made Naruto jump as he appeared beside him with a red paint-covered kunai in his hand that was poised at Naruto's temple. Let that be a lesson to you, kid. Even a wounded wolf can tear out your throat. With a chuckle, Zabuza put away his weapon and patted the blonde on the back. Not bad though, you did much better than I thought you would. Quote, letting Haku down gently this time, Naruto couldn't help but let a grin grow on his face. Now this is the kind of training I can get used to. Zabuza then showed Naruto the hand signs needed to produce the jutsu. Though he failed on the first few tries, after a bit of practice Naruto was able to create an average-sized mist, though it was nowhere as thick as Zabuza's. It'll take some practice before you get it mastered, but once you do it'll be a lifesaver, I'm sure. It was at this time that Zabuza looked up to the sky and noticed the sun's placement. Damn, that pain in the ass gangster Gato will be here any minute. With a nod to Haku, the missing nin headed back toward the shack with Haku and Naruto following behind. As you probably know, I'm under the employment of the crook who's trying to keep that bridge builder from finishing the bridge. Naruto nodded in agreement, and Zabuza continued on. He's a real slime ball, and I'm sure that he'll try to stab me in the back when he gets the chance, but with you as a wild card I don't think we'll have to worry about that anymore. Quote, Zabuza limped toward his bed, and was helped by Haku so he could pretend to be laying down. He's going to show up any seconds with his crew and ask how our progress is, so I want you to stay out of sight and only act if necessary, got it? Naruto nodded his head, and quiet as a cool breeze left the hideout. I'm still surprised that he was able to catch you back there, Haku. If I didn't know any better I'd think you were going soft on the brat. Haku narrowed her eyes, and quick as lightning tapped her master sharply between the eyes. Ow. Quote, it wasn't even 3 minutes later when Gato came stomping into the shack, with a few bodyguards in tow. Gato was a short man with a thin mustache and a bad business suit. His shrewd little eyes were hidden behind his shades. And what do we have here? My so-called master assassin, bedridden with his little friend making medicine. Gato and his thugs shared a good laugh before he continued onward. I pay you good money to keep those damn villagers away from the bridge, and for you to kill that damn Tazuna. And now I'm hearing that he plans on continuing his work, and he even has a team of ninja to protect him. Gato strutted toward the bed, his right hand clenched into a fist. The bridge builder's days are numbered, and the ninja will be handled in due time. All you need to do is give me my damn money, and shut your fat trap. Despite his appearance, Zabuza's words had lost no power at all, and he glared right into Gato's shades. Red with anger, Gato poised his arm to strike the demon of the mist, when he was suddenly thrown to the side of the room by irritated Haku. A worm such as you has no right raising his voice to Master Zabuza, let alone strike him. Haku's voice was nearly a whisper, but all within the room heard it. Gato's bodyguards readied their swords, and were ready for a fight if their boss commanded them. Picking himself off the floor, Gato was now sputtering, and cursing, his anger near breaking point. "You work for me, maggot, we have this whole place surrounded, so you better watch your tone." Gato was caught off guard as Zabuza's words reached his ears. "How many?" Despite the threat, the assassin had a smile on his face as he stared the criminal right in the eye. Gato looked to his bodyguards, and back to Zabuza before replying, his words betraying his confusion. "At least 24, and they're only a fragment of what I have at my disposal." Zabuza's smile grew larger, exposing his jagged teeth. His eyes held a mischievous glint to them. "You're gonna need more guards then, because I'm sure those 24 thugs were in an accident." Quote. Meanwhile outside, Naruto, having seen enough, decided to have some fun with the lingering group of people outside of the shack. It started off with him having the monitor lizards that he had sent out earlier meet back up with him in tree overlooking the area. He was in middle of devising a strategy when Ryuza's thoughts began echoing inside of his head. "Naruto, being that your brother's entry into this world is due to amount of chakra you supply, you can actually transfer more into them, thus making them more powerful. The same rule applies to when you summon them to begin with." Naruto smiled at this new knowledge, the possibilities now growing limitless for how to slaughter the group below. "Thanks, Ryuza, I think I'll try that out right now actually." Naruto then placed his hands on top of 2 of the reptiles before him, and began slowly focusing chakra towards them. The results were almost instantaneous, the 2 monitor lizards double in size, now growing to the height of large wolves, and rows of spikes formed down their spines. "Take this gift of my chakra, brothers, and quench your thirst for blood." The 2 lizards nodded in agreement, and stealthily began climbing down the trees toward the thugs below. A hissing to beside him alerted Naruto to the 3rd monitor lizard that was sitting beside him. "Oh, how could I have forgotten you, friend? My apologies, now it's your turn." Naruto repeated the action, and the 3rd lizard also grew in size, and quickly followed after his brethren. "Of course I'm going to enjoy myself as well." Quote. Down below and completely unaware, the large group of men were standing around, awaiting their boss. The hideout they surrounded, as creepy as it was, and that fact that a missing nin from the village hidden in the mist, was most discouraging. One such thug who was leaning against a tree was brought out of his musings when he felt something wet dripping on his head. "Fucking gross, the last thing I need is something." The man stopped his rant when he looked up, and was face to face with a large reptile. He barely had time to scream before it was upon him, and tearing into his flesh. Nearby, one of his comrades heard a commotion, and was greeted by the sight of a monster ripping the face off his friend. He managed to yell out a simple, "Look," before a second beast barreled into him, and his blood was sprayed everywhere. By this time all of the other men had looked in their direction, and were shocked to see their fellows being torn to shreds. A bone-chilling hiss turned their attention behind them, where another scale-covered monster stood menacingly. Then an adolescent in a trench coat appeared behind it, seeming completely at ease. The blonde-haired kid then proceeded to pat the lizard on the head gently before he turned his gaze toward the crowd. "Today's a bad day to be warm-blooded." To the crowd's horror, the blonde began tearing off his face, revealing scales underneath. His eyes flashed red, then settled onto a green, and a fang-filled smile spread across his face. In a flash, Naruto dashed toward the nearest person, and with relative ease, tore his arm off. The man, screaming bloody murder at the loss of his limb, was then hurled over the blonde's head toward the awaiting maw of the giant lizard he had been standing next to. The guards barely had time to unsheath their weapons before the boy-sized terror was killing left and right, limbs being flying into the air, and blood spraying like a thick mist. Naruto felt more like he was dancing than fighting. With a jump to the left, he dodged a swing from a panicked swordsman. Then he flipped over him, using his tail to snap the man's neck like a twig. Once he landed, Naruto threw his clawed hand upward, hooking his talons into the underside of another guard's mouth. Then with a tug he ripped the man's lower jaw off, and impaled him with a quick thrust of his other arm. The group was quickly thinning between the 3 powered-up monitor lizards, and the bloodlust fueled Naruto. Damn, this is starting to get out of hand. Ryuza was using all of the influence he had to keep Naruto from giving into his baser instincts, and being susceptible to the demon fox's foul chakra. With all of the blood he's drinking, he could go over the edge at any moment. The evil laughter echoing inside Naruto's head was growing steadily louder, and the Kyuubi could feel the younger mind enjoying the bloodshed he was causing. "I really starting to like this kid." Quote, there was now only one guard left, his eyes filled with fear, and his pants thoroughly soiled. All he could do was shake with fright as he watched the blood-covered blonde engage in a tug-of-war with the three lizards using the intestines of one of his comrades. Naruto, losing interest, let his allies have the meat before he started walking toward the lone survivor. Naruto's eyes looked completely unfocused as he walked, an eerie smile with red-stained teeth on his face. Right as he was within striking distance of the doomed thug, a familiar voice brought him back to earth. "I think that will be enough, boy. Leave someone alive to spread fear to his comrades." Naruto's eyes refocused as he turned around to see a grinning Zabuza and a awestruck Gato standing outside of the shack entrance. With an evil chuckle, Zabuza proceeded to pat Gato on the back. "You see, I'm more than prepared if you so happen to decide that turning on me would be a good idea. If you try anything ever again, I'll sick the boy on you." Gato gulped in fear, and along with his two pale-faced bodyguards ran as fast as he could from the hideout. The who-be doomed survivor in front of Naruto quickly scampered off to catch up to his boss. "Well, boy, I must say you certainly leave quite the impression." Naruto, feeling somewhat embarrassed, staring, licking the blood off of his person, hoping to clean up his appearance a bit. "I sure hope your pets are good at clean up. I can have all of these limbs and blood, attracting flies." Naruto motioned for his three friends to start cleaning up the scene, and summoned a few smaller lizards to assist in the cleanup. As Naruto walked back into the shack, he heard Zabuza whistle in approval. He also noticed Haku, who had been standing inside the shack, though her expression was unreadable. "Well, boy, it's getting dark. You should probably head on back to your team before they come looking for ya." Naruto looked to the sky, and noticed the sun was starting to set, confirming the assassin's words. With a simple nod, Naruto left the shack, his summons following behind, who had just finished cleaning up the area. Now that they were alone, Haku and Zabuza could speak privately. "You're a little shaken up by him, aren't you?" Zabuza had chosen to speak first, and bluntly attacked the issue he knew was on his apprentice's mind. "I must admit that I am master. He displays such skill, and it worries me what would happen if he turned on us." Zabuza sat on his cot, and a sigh escaped his lips, before he replied, "I'm not worried. The boy is so much like us I can't help but trust him. Plus, if he tried anything, I'm sure you and me would easily put him down." Quote, after their little chat, both decided that it was time to get some much-needed rest. Naruto, on the other hand, had finally made it home to Tazuna's house, and was working on his excuse. Naruto was immediately greeted by Kakashi as he entered the house. "There you are, Naruto. I was starting to get worried about you. You must have really been on a roll with that meditation, huh?" Naruto nodded his head, and explained that he was actually close to a spiritual breakthrough when he was plagued with interruptions. Kakashi asked him to explain, but Naruto said he was too tired, and that he would tell him in the morning. With that, the blonde trudged upstairs to bed, passing a curious-looking Sakura and a glaring Sasuke. Naruto was fast asleep before his head had even hit the pillow, and spent the night dreaming of blood, fighting, and irksome ice-wielding shinobi. Indeed, everyone had slept soundly that night except for Gato and his three bodyguards, who were up all night, huddled in fear at the prospect of a cannibal blonde ninja coming after them in their sleep. The next morning, Naruto was still shaking the cobwebs out of his hair at the breakfast table when he heard a knocking on Tazuna's door. An ominous feeling started to creep up his spine when Tazuna's daughter Tsunami answered the door, and he could hear her letting someone into the house. Hearing footsteps drawing near, Naruto looked to the hallway, and his face turned a sickly pale once he caught sight of the visitor. Noticing Naruto's reaction, his teammates, who were also present at the table, looked in the same direction, and were greeted with the sight of a beautiful young woman around their age. Haku wore an innocent smile on her face, and her dark hair seemed to shine, dazzling all of the men in the room, even Naruto, though he would never admit it. Sakura, being the first one to speak, asked who she was, and if she needed any assistance. There was a long pause before Haku responded. She could feel herself dying on the inside as she spoke the following words. "My name is Haku. I'm looking for my boyfriend Naruto."
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.